stones weighing 1,200 tons, moved hundreds of miles, stacked with laser precision, no wheels, no modern machinery, no explanation. For centuries, we've been told these ancient megalithic structures were built by primitive civilizations with basic tools. But the evidence tells a completely different story. In the next few hours, you're about to see structures that defy every rule of ancient construction and challenge everything you thought you knew about human history. Some of these sites are so impossible, even modern engineers admit they couldn't replicate them today. The question isn't just who built them, it's what did they know that we've forgotten? Let me know in the comment below, where in the world are you listening from? I would love to know. Now, let's start. Over 600 years ago, an emperor in China decides he wants to build a monument, but not just any monument. He orders up a single block of stone so massive it would have made everything else look like a toy. We're talking 16,250 tons, but today that stone is still sitting right where they carved it, abandoned in a quarry. It was a colossal failure. This is the insane story of the megalith that was just too damn big to move, and what it tells us about the absolute limits of what humans could do back then. So picture this. It's the early 1400s, and the Ming dynasty in China is the undisputed powerhouse of the world. They're in a golden age, and running the show is this absolute character, the Yongle Emperor, Zhu Di. This guy was a force of nature. He's the mind behind building the Forbidden City in Beijing and sending out these gigantic treasure fleets that sailed all over the Indian Ocean. The man did not think small, but one of his wildest ideas, one that's been almost totally forgotten, wasn't a palace or a fleet. It was a single piece of rock. The story really kicks off in 1402. Zhu Di takes the throne, but his path to power was messy. He basically usurped it from his own nephew in a civil war, which was a huge no-no in imperial China. It was a stain on his reputation. So he needed to show everyone he had the mandate of heaven, that he was the rightful ruler. And the best way to do that was through filial piety, which is just a fancy way of saying you have to show massive respect for your parents and ancestors. The Yongle Emperor's dad was the Hongwu Emperor, the guy who founded the whole Ming dynasty. So honoring him on a scale nobody had ever seen before wasn't just about love, it was pure political strategy. The Hongwu Emperor was buried at this huge complex outside the capital, Nanjing, called the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum. In 1405, the Yongle Emperor orders up a memorial stone slab, a stele for his dad's tomb. Now, these things were common, but the emperor's vision was something else entirely. He wanted a monument of truly insane proportions, one that would make all other steles look like pebbles. The plan was for a single structure made of 3 parts, all carved out of the mountain itself. First, a base shaped like a mythical dragon tortoise called a bixi. Then the main body, a massive rectangular block for the inscription praising his dad. And to top it all off, a capstone carved with swirling dragons. All put together, this thing was designed to be 73 meters tall. That's a 24-story building. If they pulled it off, it would have been the tallest stone structure in China by a mile. It was a giant middle finger to anyone who questioned his power. To find stone big enough and good enough, his engineers went to the Yangshan quarry, a few miles from the city. They'd been pulling limestone out of this place for centuries. But what the emperor needed wasn't just a block of stone, he needed a whole mountain. And this is where his crazy ambition started, its collision course with cold, hard reality. Can you imagine the scene at Yangshan Quarry back then? It must have been organized chaos. Thousands of guys, stonemasons, laborers, soldiers, swarming this hillside, all working on one insane project. They didn't have dynamite or anything like that. They had hammers, chisels, and a basically endless supply of manpower. The technique they used was ancient. First, they'd chisel a line of deep holes in the rock. Then, they'd hammer wooden wedges into the holes and pour water on them, over and over. As the wood soaked up the water, it would expand, slowly, silently, until the pressure inside the stone became unbearable. And then, crack! a fissure would split the rock. They just did this again and again, patiently fighting a war against geology. But the size of what they were carving is just, it's hard to wrap your head around it. The smallest piece, the capstone, was going to weigh over 6,000 tons. A modern Abrams tank is about 68 tons, so the small piece was like 90 tanks. The main body was even bigger, around 8,800 tons, that's 130 tanks. And then there was the base, the dragon tortoise. That thing was a monster. They calculated its final weight at 16,250 tons. That's more than 230 Abrams tanks. Or think about it this way, it's the weight of about 100 blue whales. It's just nuts. For years, the quarry was just a symphony of hammers and shouting. The work was brutal. The sun would bake the limestone, turning the whole place into a furnace. Dust everywhere, filling guys' lungs. One wrong move and you're crushed. And yet, they pretty much did it. Through sheer force of will, they managed to carve out all three sections. The head, the body, and the base were all lying there in the quarry, mostly freed from the bedrock. The hardest part of the plan was done, or so they thought. There was just one tiny problem. Now they had to move it. So the quarry is only a few kilometers from the mausoleum. Not far, right? But for the guys who had to move a 16 to 50-ton block of stone, it might as well have been on the moon. The head engineer must have been losing his mind just thinking about it. How in the hell were they supposed to do this? Back then, moving heavy stuff was all about brute force. They'd build ramps, lay down logs as rollers, put the object on a sledge, and get thousands of men and oxen to pull on ropes. In the winter, they'd pour water on the roads to make a sheet of ice to reduce the friction. These methods worked. They built the Great Wall with this stuff. But the stone at Yangshan was a completely different animal. It was so far off the charts that none of the old tricks were going to work. The weight alone was insane. Modern engineers figure it would have taken at least 100,000 men pulling in perfect unison. Just feeding and housing that many guys would have been a nightmare, but even then, the physics was against them. The pressure from the stone would have crushed the wooden rollers into sawdust. The sledge would have just sunk into the dirt, and the path wasn't flat, it went over hills. How do you drag 16,250 tons uphill? The forces are just astronomical. And then, even if by some miracle they got the pieces there, they had to lift them. They'd have to hoist the 8,800-ton body on top of the 16,200-ton base. Then lift the 16,100-ton head and put it on top of that 24 stories in the air. They had no cranes, no hydraulics, just levers and ropes. It was pure fantasy. Even today, we'd have a hell of a time with this. You'd need one of only a handful of superlift cranes that exist on the entire planet. So you have to wonder, what was the real story? At some point, the guys in charge must have realized, this can't be done. We've hit a wall. Imagine having to tell that to an emperor known for his temper. Refusing an order could get you killed. Some historians think the engineers knew it was impossible all along and were just too scared to say so. Others wonder if the project just got scrapped for other reasons. Around this time, the emperor was moving his capital from Nanjing to Beijing and pouring a fortune into building the Forbidden City. Maybe he just lost interest or the money ran out. Either way, the message was clear, this ain't happening. So, the order came down to stop. The hammering went silent, the workers went home, and the quarry was abandoned. And there they are. The three giant stones, left right where they were carved over 600 years ago. The massive base is still fused to the bedrock, and the body and head are lying nearby, almost completely carved out, but never fully separated. Sleeping giants. Of course, the Yongle Emperor still needed a monument for his dad. A few years later, a new, much smaller stele was put up at the mausoleum. It's called the Shenggong Shengdek stele. By any normal measure, it's huge, about 9 meters tall, but it's a shadow of the original dream. It's the consolation prize. So what do we make of all this? Is it just a story about a massive failure? Yeah, on one level, it's one of the biggest engineering blunders in history. A huge miscalculation. But if you only see it as a failure, you're missing the point. Those abandoned stones are a monument. Not the one the emperor wanted, but a monument to the insane ambition and power of the Ming dynasty. These are the same people who built the Forbidden City, remember? They weren't idiots. They were just pushing the absolute edge of what was humanly and technologically possible. The Megaliths tell a story about power hitting a hard stop. It's a rare look at the physical boundaries of the pre-industrial world. We live in a time where it feels like if you have enough money and willpower, you can build anything. The Yangshan quarry is a brutal reminder that it wasn't always like that. It's a world where gravity was a tyrant you couldn't beat. It's a lesson in humility, carved in stone. Today, the Yangshan quarry is a park. You can go there and walk among these silent giants, and it's just impossible to capture the scale of them. They're weathered and covered in moss, slowly being taken back by nature. They feel less like a failed project and more like some bizarre piece of land art. They were supposed to tell the story of one emperor's greatness. Instead, they tell a much more interesting story, the eternal fight between our wild dreams and the laws of physics. The Yongli Emperor wanted a monument that would last forever and scream his family's glory to the heavens. He failed. But in that failure, he left behind something way more fascinating. He accidentally created a monument to the limits of power itself, a memorial to the moment when even the most powerful man on Earth had to bow to the universe. The stones were abandoned because they were a failure. But today, they succeed as something else entirely, a source of pure wonder. And it makes you think, doesn't it? How wild is it that sometimes our greatest, most spectacular failures can become our most fascinating and enduring monuments? There are places out there that just don't make sense. Places that make you question everything you think you know about the past. Well, on the quiet Spanish island of Menorca, there's a mystery that's literally carved in stone. Scattered all over this island are these silent stone giants. They're monuments from a lost time, built by a forgotten people, and they bring up a question that's been freaking archaeologists out for centuries. It's just insane. We're talking about more than 30 of these structures, with a handful of them still standing perfectly balanced after thousands of years. They're called Taulas, and they are found nowhere else on the planet. Taula just means tables in the local language, and you can see why. It's a massive vertical stone pillar, some reaching up to 5 meters, that's almost 17 feet, with another monster rock laid perfectly flat on top, making this giant tease. Think about that. These were built thousands of years ago, way before anybody had cranes or power tools. How did they do it? And more importantly, why? Were they tombs? Were they some kind of weird temple? Or was it something else entirely? We're going to investigate the Menorca Taulas and try to figure out what these people were thinking before their story is lost for good. And hey, before we start, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. You don't want to miss what we're diving into next. To even begin to get your head around the Taulas, you have to understand the people who built them. Menorca is basically a giant open-air museum. It has over 1,500 prehistoric sites on an island that's only 37 miles across. It's one of the most archaeologically packed places on Earth. And in September 2023, this incredible landscape finally got the credit it deserves when UNESCO officially made Talayatic Menorca a World Heritage Site. This whole prehistoric world was run by a mysterious civilization called the Talayatic culture. They pop up on Menorca and the island next door. Menorca and their culture really gets going in the late 2nd millennium BC. Their society was built around these fortified towns with big stone towers called talayats. These things were like watchtowers, symbols of power looking out over the land and sea. These people were farmers and herders, but they weren't cut off from the rest of the world. Archaeologists have found stuff from Carthage and Ibiza, so we know they were trading. They were also famous for being incredible warriors, especially with slings. Ancient writers even noted that the Carthaginian army would recruit these guys from the islands because they were just deadly accurate. But then the Romans show up around 123 BCE and the Talayatic culture just sort of fades out. They left no written language, no histories. All they left behind were these insane stone structures, the talayats, tombs called navetas, and the weirdest of all, the Taulas. and the Taulas are only on Menorca. That's one of the biggest parts of the puzzle. Each Taula stands inside a big U-shaped wall, like it's defining a sacred space. For a long time, people argued about whether these enclosures had roofs, but then they found huge fire pits right in front of the Taulas. You can't have a roof over a giant bonfire, so these were open-air sanctuaries. The scale of these things is hard to wrap your mind around. The main pillar at the Taralba din Salor site is nearly 5 meters tall. How did a Bronze or Iron Age society quarry, move, shape, and then perfectly balance these multi-ton limestone blocks? The vertical stone is sunk deep into the bedrock, and the capstone just sits there, so precise it survived thousands of years of weather. This wasn't just building, it was a statement. But a statement of what? That's where the theories start to get wild. The first big idea, and it's a compelling one, is that the Taulas were basically sophisticated astronomical observatories, gateways to the stars. This whole theory gets its power from one simple fact: almost all Taula enclosures face south. An archaeoastronomer named Michael Hoskin argued this was too specific to be an accident. He proposed they were watching for a particular event in the southern sky. His research suggested it was the constellation of Centaurus. Thousands of years ago, because of the Earth's slow wobble, it's called precession. You could see this constellation from Menorca. For a farming society, knowing exactly when to plant your crops is everything. The rising of these stars could have been their calendar. The U-shaped wall would block out all the other light, and a priest could stand in a specific spot and use the Taula to frame the stars rising on the horizon. But here's the problem with that theory: the dating is all screwed up. Due to that same wobble, Centaurus dropped below the horizon and became invisible from Menorca around 1000 BCE. But the evidence shows the Taulas were actually built hundreds of years after that, mostly between 500 and 300 BCE. So how could they be built to watch stars that were no longer there? So if not stars, what about the moon? A German researcher, Waldemar Fenn, was convinced these people were obsessed with astronomy. He argued the Taulas weren't aligned to a fixed point, but were tracking the moon's complex 18.6-year cycle. He suggested that from inside the enclosure, the moon's position would appear to move between the top corners of the giant T's over that cycle. If he's right, these things weren't just simple calendars. They were incredibly advanced lunar calculators. But what if this has nothing to do with the sky? What if it's all about religion? A competing theory, and a powerful one, is that these were places for rituals and animal sacrifices. The main version of this theory is centered on a bull god. Back in 1967, a Spanish archaeologist named J. Mascaro Pasarius said the T-shape isn't just a T, it's a direct representation of a bull's face and horns. And this idea got a huge boost when excavators at the Taralba din Salort site found a beautiful bronze figurine of a bull right near the Taula. They also found artifacts linked to the Punic goddess, Tanit. The bull was a massive symbol of power and divinity all over the ancient world, from Egypt to Crete. Some people think the first settlers on Menorca might have come from Crete, which makes that connection even more interesting. In this theory, the Taula is the god, the enclosure is the temple, and the pit out front is where the sacrifices happened. And they found the evidence: massive fire pits and the bones of young animals, suggesting ritual sacrifice and huge communal feasts. Then there's a kind of hybrid theory that the Taulas were healing centers. This is where it gets really weird. At one dig, they found a small Egyptian figurine with an inscription that says, "I am Imhotep, the god of medicine." They also found a bronze horse hoof, which is a symbol tied to Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine. Proponents of this idea try to tie it all together, connecting these healing gods back to the Centaurus constellation, noting that in Greek myth, the centaur Chiron was a master of healing. Maybe people were brought to the Taulas at certain times, hoping for a divine cure. It's this wild mix of astronomy, religion, and medicine, and it shows you just how complex these ancient people's beliefs might have been. Then you get to the stuff that mainstream academics don't want to talk about. This is where we zoom out and connect the dots to a bigger, global mystery. Local legends on Menorca have always talked about giants who used to live on the island. And when you look at the sheer size of the Taulas and Taliats, you can see why. The stonework is often called Cyclopean, a name borrowed from ancient Greek sites that people believed could only have been built by the mythical one-eyed Cyclopes. When you really look at a Taula with these multi-ton stones stacked with impossible precision, you can't help but wonder, how the hell did they do this? And that same question gets asked all over the planet. You hear it at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, where they were putting up massive T-shaped pillars 12,000 years ago. You hear it at Stonehenge, at Sacsayhuamán in Peru. Could the Taulas of Menorca be a local version of a lost global tradition of building with giant stones? That T-shape is crazy. It's unique to Menorca in this form, but T-shaped pillars are the defining feature of Göbekli Tepe, a place thousands of years older but with a stunningly similar design. Is it possible this symbol had some deep, universal meaning that we've completely forgotten? This view asks you to see Menorca as just one piece of a giant puzzle. It asks you to question the official story of our past. Were our ancestors way more advanced than we think? Did they have some forgotten knowledge of engineering or physics that let them pull this stuff off? The people who push this view don't have all the answers. They just point to the patterns, the similar stonework, the astronomical alignments that pop up across continents and across thousands of years, and they ask, are we looking at the fingerprints of a lost chapter of human history? From that angle, the Taulas aren't just a local puzzle, they're a key to a much bigger, much stranger global mystery. So, where does that leave us? In the end, the stones of Menorca are keeping their secrets. Whether they were built to watch the stars, worship a god, or as landmarks left by giants, they don't give up easy answers. They aren't just ruins, they are questions written in stone, and they challenge everything we assume about the people who came before us. The evidence for every theory is strong, but nothing is a slam dunk. The astronomical alignments are convincing, but you can't ignore a bronze bull statue found at the altar. Maybe the truth isn't one or the other. Maybe it's all of it. The Taulas could have been the center of their entire world, where science, religion, medicine, and community all came together under the sun and stars. What's left standing in the Mediterranean sun is a monument to the power of mystery. These stone giants are the legacy of a culture that vanished but managed to create something timeless. And maybe the real point of the Taulas isn't to find one neat answer. Maybe their real purpose is the feeling of wonder they give us, that mystery that keeps us curious, keeps us questioning, and keeps us exploring the deepest parts of our own story. In the long story of human history, there are these huge blank spots, giant question marks that we just can't seem to fill. We're always told that real civilization, the big stuff, monumental architecture, started in places like Egypt or Mesopotamia. But what if that's not the whole story? What if one of the most incredible artistic cultures of the ancient world popped up on this tiny, isolated rock in the middle of the Mediterranean, way before anyone was stacking stones for the pyramids? And what if they left behind clues so bizarre and mysterious that they're still messing with our heads today? We're talking about 5,500 years ago on the island of Malta. A whole civilization rose and fell, and they left no writing, no stories, just these massive stone temples. And inside, they're covered with these intricate spiral carvings and these strange, huge statues of fat figures. It hints at a people who were obsessed with life, death, and fertility. But who were they, and what secrets are they hiding in plain sight? So you look at Malta on a map, deep in the Mediterranean, it just doesn't seem like the kind of place to launch a major civilization. There are no big rivers, not a ton of natural resources. And yet, this sun-baked island has this insane concentration of prehistoric monuments. More than 20 major temple sites are scattered across the islands. The whole collection is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's a puzzle that has been driving archaeologists crazy for over 100 years. These things were built between roughly 3600 and 2500 BC. Now, think about that for a second. That means the oldest of these temples are among the earliest freestanding stone buildings in the world. They predate the first pyramids in Egypt and the main construction at Stonehenge by centuries, in some cases by a full 1,000 years. This just completely rewires the official timeline of human achievement we're all taught. These aren't just primitive huts. They're complex buildings with multiple rooms, massive facades, and paved courtyards. Local legends couldn't explain them, so they just figured a race of giants built them. And honestly, you can see why. We're still debating who they were, but what they built is undeniable, proof of an organized, smart, and deeply spiritual society. And in this incredible lineup of ancient sites, one really stands out for its pure artistic firepower, the Tarxien temples. It was found back in 1913, not by some grand expedition, but because local farmers kept hitting massive stones while plowing. They reported it, and the director of the museum, a guy named Themistocles Zamet, started digging. What he found was the absolute peak of this temple building culture. This is where these silent Neolithic artists left their most powerful messages about what they believed. Stepping into Tarxien is like stepping into a world that shouldn't exist, a world that challenges our neat, tidy ideas about history. The Tarxien site isn't just one temple, it's a complex of 4 interconnected structures, built and tweaked over almost 1,000 years. As you walk through it, you're literally walking through layers of time. The oldest temple is pretty simple, but the central temple, the last one built, has this wild 6-apse layout that you don't see anywhere else. And the way they built these things is an engineering mystery. Get this, they did it all without metal tools. Metal hadn't been invented yet. Their entire toolkit was basically stone hammers and sharp pieces of flint and obsidian they had to import. And with that, they quarried, shaped, and put up these massive limestone blocks with incredible precision. These guys had a serious working knowledge of geology. They used tough, hard, coralline limestone for the outer walls that had to stand up to the weather, and a softer Globigerina limestone for the inside where they did all the carving. And how did they move these giant, multi-ton blocks? The best guess is they used a system of stone spheres, basically prehistoric ball bearings. They found piles of these stone balls right at the site, left behind after they'd served their purpose. It's genius. The walls themselves are brilliantly designed, made of 2 layers with the gap in between packed with rubble and dirt for stability. The doorways are classic megalithic design, 2 huge uprights with a massive stone slab on top. But maybe the most impressive part is that these temples probably weren't open to the sky. Evidence suggests they had corbelled roofs where they stacked stones, each layer jutting in just a little bit to create these huge, self-supporting stone domes. You can just imagine how awe-inspiring it would have been to stand inside one of those enclosed, sacred spaces. The layout also tells you this wasn't an open house. There are physical barriers and blocked-off passages, which suggests access was tightly controlled. Not just anyone could wander into the deepest, most holy rooms. This points to a real social hierarchy: priests, or some kind of special initiates, who led the rituals in secret spaces, hidden from everyone else. These weren't just buildings, they were machines for creating an experience of mystery, power, and the divine. The architecture is mind-blowing, but it's the art at Tarxien that really makes it special. The walls of the South Temple are covered in some of the most beautiful and complex spiral carvings from the entire prehistoric world. These mesmerizing patterns just flow across the stone. They're not just random scribbles, they're carved with a confidence that tells you this was a deeply established artistic and symbolic language. But what did it all mean? That's the million-dollar question. The spiral is one of the oldest symbols in human history. You see it everywhere. The most popular theory is that it represents eternity, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. For a community of farmers tied to the seasons, that makes a lot of sense. Some researchers think it was just inspired by nature, like the shape of a seashell or a curling fern. Others see something more cosmic, tying the spirals to the movements of the sun and stars, kind of like the art you see at Newgrange in Ireland. Some have even floated the idea that these patterns could be calendars, helping them track time. Then there's another wild theory. What if the patterns weren't just for decoration? What if these repetitive, hypnotic swirls were functional, used to induce a trance-like state during rituals, a portal to the spirit world for a shaman? In one spot, a stone block carved with two spirals seems deliberately placed to block the entrance to the holiest part of the temple. Some people think these are like a pair of stylized, watchful eyes guarding the inner sanctum. Whatever the true meaning was, the sheer amount of sophisticated spiral art at Tarxien proves this was a culture with a highly developed abstract mind. They weren't just drawing what they saw, they were mapping their understanding of the cosmos onto the very stones of their temples. Standing guard inside the South Temple is maybe the most famous and argued over thing ever found in Malta, the bottom half of a giant statue. Just from the legs and pleated skirt, archaeologists figure the original would have stood almost 3 meters tall. This is the so-called Fat Lady of Tarxien, a name given to a whole series of these Kirby statues found all over Malta's temple sites. Traditionally, everyone figured these were statues of a mother goddess or a fertility goddess. For a society that depended on the fertility of the land and their people to survive, it seems logical that their main god would be all about abundance. In that world, being obese wasn't a bad thing. It was a powerful symbol of health, prosperity, and the ability to create life. Finding them in temples seems to lock in the idea of a widespread fertility cult. But it might not be that simple. More recent theories challenge this. Some scholars point out that the figures are often deliberately androgynous or asexual. When you look closely, many of them don't have clear female features. It's been suggested their gender wasn't fixed. Some even have sockets where different heads could be attached, so one statue could represent different gods or different ancestors at different times. And that leads to a completely different idea. What if they're not gods at all, but revered ancestors? In that view, the statues are about lineage. The chubbiness isn't just about fertility, it's about success and a blessing on the community. The name Fat Lady is just a modern label that might be totally misleading. Maybe what they were focused on was fatness, itself as a symbol of power and prestige, a divine quality that was beyond gender. Whether they're a great mother, powerful ancestors, or something we don't even have a name for, these statues give us a real look into what this culture valued. They worshipped figures that represented stability, prosperity, and the continuation of their people. It's a huge contrast to the ripped warrior gods of later cultures. Here, power wasn't about war, it was about abundance. The art and architecture at Tarxien aren't just a museum exhibit, they were the stage for a lost religion. And thanks to some incredible archaeology, you can still feel the echoes of their ceremonies. The temple walls are carved with reliefs of animals, giving us a clear menu of what was important to them: goats, rams, pigs, and especially bulls. A famous carving shows a bull, a timeless symbol of strength, right next to a sow, a symbol of fertility. And these weren't just pictures, there's overwhelming evidence of animal sacrifice. Archaeologists found huge deposits of animal bones crammed into hidden chambers and special altars. But the smoking gun, literally, was found inside a sealed stone altar in the South Temple. They pulled out the stone plug, and the chamber was filled with horns and bones, and right there with them was the flint knife used in the ritual. It's chilling. Fire was also a big deal. They found hearths in the corridors and were still debating what for. Was it for light, warmth, ritual purification, or were they cooking up sacrificial feasts? You can still see pink residue on some stones where fires once burned hot. The use of red ochre paint is also huge. In a lot of ancient cultures, this red pigment was a powerful symbol for blood and the life force. They probably used it to anoint the statues or pour it out as an offering to the earth. But the story of Tarxien doesn't end with the temple builders. Around 2500 BC, this incredible culture, after flourishing for more than 1,000 years, just vanished. There are no signs of war or some big catastrophe. They just disappeared, leaving their amazing temples to fall silent. Hundreds of years later, new people from the Bronze Age arrived on Malta. They found these ancient structures and, recognizing their power, started using parts of the Tarxien complex as a cremation cemetery, burying their dead on the sacred ground of the people who came before. So you step back and look at the whole thing, and you're just left with more questions than answers. Who were these people? How did a small, isolated population develop the social structure and the know-how to build all this? They just seemed to burst onto the scene as master builders with no practice runs. What did the spiral really mean? Was it a map of the cosmos, a shamanic tool, a symbol of eternity, or all of the above? And who were the big-bodied figures they carved in stone? A single, all-powerful mother goddess, or a whole lineup of respected ancestors? And the most haunting question of all, where did they go? Why does a culture at the absolute peak of its power, a civilization that lasted for a millennium, just blink out of existence around 2500 BC? These are the questions that make Tarxien more than just an archaeological site. It's a puzzle carved in stone. The people of Tarxien left us no writing, no king lists, no epic poems. Their legacy is quieter, but maybe even more profound. They left us their art and their architecture, a symbolic language that speaks of a deep connection to nature, a reverence for life, and a complex understanding of the universe. They prove that you don't need metal, writing, or war to be an advanced civilization. Sometimes, all you need is art, spirit, and a powerful sense of community. The Tarxien temples are more than just a pile of old rocks. They're a monument to a completely lost world of thought, a spiritual universe that exploded with creativity and then just went silent. They force us to imagine a totally different version of the past, one where art was the most advanced technology and celebrating life was the ultimate form of worship. We may never know all the secrets of the temple builders, but their legacy is still there, whispering from the heart of the Mediterranean, a timeless invitation to wonder, to question, and to explore the deepest parts of our own human story. Gunung Padang, Indonesia, the pyramid older than Göbekli Tepe? So, we've all been taught a pretty standard story about human history: the Great Pyramids in Egypt, the peak of ancient building. Civilization itself? It supposedly kicked off in the Fertile Crescent about 6,000 years ago, right after we figured out farming. Before that, the story goes, we were all just small tribes of hunter-gatherers running around, not capable of building anything bigger than a hut. But what if that entire timeline is just wrong? Out in the mountains of West Java, Indonesia, a team of researchers uncovered something that completely challenges that story. It's a huge megalithic site, and according to their incredible claims, it's not just older than the Egyptian pyramids, it's potentially thousands of years older than Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which already made us tear up the history books. This place is called Gunung Padang, which means Mountain of Enlightenment. The story involves a potential lost civilization, a massive scientific controversy, and a discovery that can make us rethink where we come from. But is it really the world's oldest pyramid, or is it a wild theory that got way ahead of the evidence? The real story is a lot more complicated and fascinating than you think. Alright, so picture this. High up in West Java, sitting on an extinct volcano almost 900 meters above sea level, is Gunung Padang. For the local Sundanese people, this place has always been sacred, wrapped in myths. There's a story about a king, Siliwangi, who tried to build a palace there in just one night. For hundreds of years, it was a place of pilgrimage, its true size hidden under jungle and fog. To the rest of the world, Gunung Padang was just a blip in some old Dutch colonial reports from the 1890s. It wasn't until 1979 that local farmers rediscovered it, and modern archaeologists started paying attention. And what they found was wild, the largest megalithic site in all of Southeast Asia. It's a massive complex of 5 stone terraces, all connected by a central staircase with almost 400 steps going up the side of the hill. The whole place is covered in thousands of rectangular volcanic stones. These stones, called columnar joints, are a natural feature of the volcano, but here they look like they've been arranged, stacked, and put into place on purpose. You can see retaining walls and what some people think are chambers, gates, and ritual platforms. Initial studies back in the 80s were pretty conservative. Archaeologists found pottery on the surface that they dated to about 2,500 years ago, putting it in Indonesia's late prehistoric period. For a while, that was the official story. Gunung Padang was an impressive but relatively recent ceremonial site, important for local history, but not a world shaker. But then an Indonesian geologist, Dr. Danny Hilman Natawijaja, looked at this hill and saw something completely different. He didn't just see terraces on a hill, he saw the top of a massive buried structure. He believed what was visible was just the tip of the iceberg, and his mission to prove it kicked off one of the biggest firestorms in modern archaeology. So, starting around 2011, Dr. Natawijaja and his team went all in on Gunung Padang. They weren't just digging with shovels, they brought in the heavy-duty tech. They used ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity, and seismic tomography. Basically, they gave the whole hill a CAT scan to see what was underneath, and what they said they found was mind-blowing. They reported evidence of multiple layers built one on top of the other, stretching deep into the hill. They argued these weren't natural layers of dirt, but different phases of construction built thousands of years apart. They even said they detected hidden chambers buried deep inside the structure. To get a closer look, they drilled core samples from deep inside the hill and pulled out organic material, basically old soil trapped between what they believed were man-made layers. They sent that soil for radiocarbon dating. The results, which they published in the journal Archaeological Prospection in October 2023, were an absolute bombshell. They laid out a timeline for the site that was just staggering. The top layer, what we can see, they called Unit 1. It lined up with the mainstream dating of about 2,000 to 3,000 years old. But underneath that, they claimed there was a Unit 2 dating back to around 7,500 to 8,000 years ago. Deeper still, they said they found Unit 3, which they dated to between 9,000 and 20,000 years old. And at the very bottom, what they called Unit 4A, chamber made of sculpted lava rock. The carbon dating from the soil pointed to an age that sounds almost impossible, between 14,000 and 27,000 years old. The paper's conclusion was breathtaking. They claimed Gunung Padang wasn't a natural hill at all, but a complex, layered pyramid built by humans. And if the first stages of its construction really happened during the last ice age, it would make Gunung Padang the oldest pyramid in the world by a long shot, predating Egypt's pyramid of Djoser by over 20,000 years. It would even be more than twice as old as Göbekli Tepe. The paper argued these builders must have possessed remarkable masonry capabilities, which just doesn't fit the picture of hunter-gatherers from the Paleolithic era. It hinted at a lost, advanced civilization that was thriving during the Ice Age. For a minute, it seemed like the history books were about to get a complete rewrite. The second that paper was published, the scientific community went into an uproar. Archaeologists, geologists, and dating experts from all over the world started raising huge red flags. The backlash was fast, it was brutal, and in the end, it was devastating for the paper. In March 2024, the journal Archaeological Prospection and its publisher Wiley did something almost unheard of. They officially retracted the paper. The retraction notice said the article had a major error that the peer review process somehow missed. And that error blew a hole in the entire theory. The biggest problem was the radiocarbon dating. The critics and the journal pointed out that the team had dated soils, not man-made artifacts. The dates they got, as old as 27,000 years, only proved how old the dirt was. It didn't prove when humans built something. To do that, you need to date stuff that's clearly connected to human activity, like charcoal from a fire pit, tools, or bones with cut marks. The soil from the deep layers at Gunung Padang had nothing like that. One critic put it perfectly. It's like dating the soil under the Eiffel Tower and then claiming the tower is 20,000 years old. Without a direct link between what you're dating and a human hand, the dates are meaningless for proving when a structure was built. On top of that, other geologists completely disagreed with the idea that the hill was an artificial pyramid. Volcanologist Sutino Bronto has argued that Gunung Padang is just the neck of an ancient volcano. Those pillar-like rocks? That's a common natural thing called columnar jointing, which happens when lava cools and cracks. That so-called cement the team found? Other experts say it's just natural chemical weathering. Archaeologists also pointed out that there's zero other evidence of an advanced Ice Age civilization in that area. A society that could build something this massive would have left other stuff behind: settlements, tools, graves. But the archaeological record from that period in Indonesia only shows typical hunter-gatherer groups. The claim of remarkable masonry capabilities 25,000 years ago just wasn't supported by anything else. The lead author, Dr. Natawijaja, and his team fired back, completely disagreeing with the retraction. They called it unjust and a form of censorship, and they stand by their data and their interpretation. The whole thing became a battle between a revolutionary new idea and the established scientific consensus that demands rock-solid proof. So where does this leave us? And how did Gunung Padang get compared to a place like Göbekli Tepe? That comparison is key to the whole story. Göbekli Tepe, found in Turkey in the 90s, was a total game changer. It's about 11,500 years old and was built by hunter-gatherers, proving that primitive people were way more organized and capable than we ever thought. It single-handedly pushed back the timeline for when humans started building massive structures. The researchers behind the Gunung Padang pyramid theory suggested they were just taking the next step. The idea was, if Göbekli Tepe pushed back the dawn of civilization, maybe Gunung Padang was the proof we needed to push it even further, deep into the Ice Age. This idea plays into a really powerful narrative, the possibility of a lost, advanced civilization from a forgotten age. But here's where we have to separate the hype from the facts. As of today, the scientific consensus is that Göbekli Tepe is the oldest known megalithic site, backed by decades of careful digging and clear evidence. The crazy age claims for Gunung Padang, on the other hand, have been rejected by the wider scientific community because the methods were fundamentally flawed. Most experts believe what's under the surface is just a natural volcanic formation. But the story isn't quite over. All this controversy has brought a ton of new attention to the site. In early 2025, Indonesia's Minister of Culture, Fadli Zon, called for more research, showing the government is still very interested in what's going on there. There's talk of careful, phased restoration and continuing studies, this time in collaboration with Indonesia's National Research and Innovation Agency. Gunung Padang is still a massive puzzle, a place where science, myth, and national pride all crash into each other. On one hand, you have the parts we can see, the megalithic terraces, which are absolutely incredible and likely about 2,000 to 3,000 years old. That alone makes it a testament to Indonesia's ancient history. On the other hand, you have this wild, tantalizing claim of a much older pyramid, a claim that sparked a global debate before it was retracted by the scientific journal that published it. So is Gunung Padang a natural volcano with some cool ancient terraces on top? Or is it a buried pyramid from a lost civilization? Right now, the overwhelming scientific consensus says it's a natural hill. But science is always a work in progress. The whole controversy is a wild reminder that we have to stay open to ideas that challenge everything we think we know, but we also have to stick to the hard evidence that separates science from pure speculation. What do you think is going on at Gunung Padang? Is it a natural wonder? Or is there a bigger story that science is missing? Let me know in the comments. Avebury Stone Circle, England, larger than Stonehenge, but forgotten. So for centuries, there's been one name that completely dominates the story of ancient Britain, Stonehenge. You know the image, right? That iconic silhouette sticking up out of the Salisbury Plain. It's a global symbol of ancient mystery. We see it everywhere. Postcards, movies, it's burned into our brains. It's supposed to be the absolute pinnacle of what our Stone Age ancestors could do. But what if everything you thought you knew about this ancient world was just wrong? What if the greatest prehistoric monument in the British Isles isn't the one you think it is? What if there was another one, way bigger, a prehistoric complex so vast that a whole village was built inside its walls, surrounded by hundreds of giant stones? This isn't some sci-fi movie. This is the story of Avebury, a lost world that completely rewrites ancient history. To really get your head around what's been forgotten, you first have to look at what we all know. And look, Stonehenge is, without a doubt, an absolute masterpiece of engineering. It was built in stages, but its famous stone circle went up around 2500 BC. The Sarsen stones are massive, some weighing 40, even up to 50 tons, and they were moved and set up with this insane astronomical precision that researchers are still trying to figure out. The whole thing is lined up with the solstices. It's like a celestial clock made of rock, built by people who had a deep, deep understanding of the cosmos. It feels like a temple. Every stone is shaped, every angle is on purpose. It's like a sacred stage for some kind of ritual we can only guess at. And its fame is totally deserved. Over 1 million people go to see it every year, all trying to get a little connection to that deep, mysterious past. You have to walk on a special path, kept at a distance from the stones, which just adds to this whole untouchable, mystical vibe. Stonehenge feels like this perfect, final statement left behind by a lost civilization. Its story is so powerful, so complete, that it just casts this huge shadow over everything else. We've been so hypnotized by it that we've completely missed the much, much bigger picture just 20 miles away. It's like we've been staring at a magnificent cathedral with no idea there was an entire city just over the horizon. For generations, the history books have told us a simple story. Stonehenge was the center of the Neolithic world. But the history books are wrong. Welcome to Avebury. Now, when you first see it, it might not seem as dramatic as Stonehenge. There are no giant lintels hanging up in the air. The stones are raw, they're rugged, unshaped, and they're kind of scattered all over this rolling landscape. But then you start to walk, and the sheer mind-bending scale of this place just hits you. This isn't just a circle of stones, it's a world of them. The outer circle at Avebury is the largest megalithic stone circle on the planet. It's over 331 meters across. To give you some perspective, you could take the entire Stonehenge monument, the ditch, the bank, all of it, and fit it inside Avebury's central ring, something like 16 times over. It's not even close. The earthwork around it, this massive bank and ditch, is nearly a mile around. When it was new, that ditch was 30 feet deep and the bank was just as high, making this gleaming 60-foot wall of white chalk you could have seen for miles. And then there are the stones. Originally, there were almost 100 sarsens in just the outer ring, some weighing well over 40 tons. One dig found a single buried stone that they think weighed over 100 tons, making it one of the heaviest megaliths in Britain. And they weren't just in one circle. Inside that massive outer ring, there were 2 more separate stone circles. One of them had something called a cove, 3 enormous stones facing inward, and the other had a huge 20-foot tall obelisk that some guy drew in the 18th century before it got destroyed. Here's the wild part. Unlike Stonehenge, which is all isolated and roped off, Avebury feels alive. You can walk right up to the stones, you can touch the lichen-covered sarsen, and just feel the weight of time. Sheep are just grazing between them. A road literally runs right through the middle of it, and there's a village with a pub nestled inside the southern half of the circle. This isn't a museum piece, it's a place where thousands of years of history are just part of daily life. The scale is so huge that for centuries, people lived and died here without even really knowing they were inside one of the wonders of the ancient world. The fact that there's a village inside isn't some modern screw-up. It's a clue to what this place might have been for. While Stonehenge feels exclusive, like it was only for high priests or some elite group, Avebury feels communal. Its massive, open design could have held thousands of people. Archaeologists think it was built for huge community gatherings, festivals, and rituals that involved everybody, not just a chosen few. The stones themselves seem to back this up. Stonehenge's stones are uniform, they're precise. Avebury's were picked for their natural shapes. An antiquarian, this guy William Stukeley, who studied the site back in the 1700s, he had this theory that the stones were deliberately chosen to be one of 2 shapes: tall, slender stones that he thought were male, and wider, diamond-shaped ones he saw as female. This idea of duality suggests they were focused on life, fertility, and community, not just staring at the stars. Avebury wasn't a quick job. It grew and it changed over centuries, from about 2850 BC to 2200 BC. That long construction period means that generations of people pitched in, each adding to what their ancestors started. This wasn't a static temple, it was a dynamic, evolving city of stone. That fundamental difference points to a different kind of society. Stonehenge speaks of hierarchy, of specialized knowledge. Avebury speaks of a collective effort of social inclusion. It wasn't a place you just visited for a ceremony, it was a place you lived with. It was the heart of a community, a prehistoric metropolis that stretched its influence for miles. But to really understand Avebury, you have to zoom out. The stone circles aren't just sitting there by themselves. They're the crazy centerpiece of a much bigger sacred landscape, a whole network of sites that covers miles of the countryside. This is where the story gets even bigger. Leading out of the henge is the West Kennet Avenue, a ceremonial road marked by pairs of standing stones that once ran for 1.5 miles, connecting Avebury to another important site called the Sanctuary. Just imagine a huge procession moving between these giant stones, from the buzzing heart of the stone city to a more private, sacred spot. And sitting on a ridge, looking out over this whole landscape, is a monument that's way older than Avebury or Stonehenge. This is the West Kennet Long Barrow. Built around 3650 BC, more than 600 years before the first work even started at Stonehenge, this is one of the biggest and most incredible Neolithic tombs in Britain. It's a house for the dead, a cathedral for the ancestors. Walking up to it is a humbling experience. Giant sarsen stones guard the entrance. You have to stoop down to get through the passage, and suddenly you step out of the modern world and into a space that's been sacred for over 5,500 years. Inside, there are 5 stone chambers. Archaeologists found the remains of at least 46 people in here, men, women, children, all laid to rest over generations. It wasn't just a tomb, it was a place of ritual, a real link between the living and their ancestors. Just building this barrow is estimated to have taken over 15,000 hours of work. But there's one more monument in this landscape, and it's maybe the most mysterious and just, wow. From the entrance of the long barrow, you can't miss it. There's a huge, man-made, perfectly cone-shaped hill in the distance. This is Silbury Hill. This thing is insane. Silbury Hill is the largest prehistoric man-made mound in all of Europe. They finished it around 2400 BC, about the same time the Great Pyramids of Egypt were being built, and it's comparable to them in size. It's 130 feet tall, built from 500,000 tons of chalk and earth. The amount of labor is almost impossible to imagine, an estimated 18 million hours of work. And here's the most baffling part, there's nothing inside it. People have tunneled into it. They've dug shafts from the top. They've found no burial, no treasure, no central chamber, nothing. So what the hell is it? It's a monument to what? A mountain of pure effort, its gleaming white chalk sides once dominating the landscape, a testament to the incredible power and organization of the people who lived here. When you put all these pieces together, a totally new timeline of ancient Britain emerges. The story doesn't start with stone circles, it starts with the dead. Around 3650 BC, the community builds the Great Tomb at West Kennet, locking in their sacred connection to the land through their ancestors. Then, the landscape evolves. The main work at Avebury kicks off around 2850 BC with the massive henge and the inner circles. The giant outer circle and the avenues were probably finished around 2500 BC, making it contemporary with, and in some parts older than, the famous Sarsen Circle at Stonehenge. Finally, around 2400 BC comes the colossal statement of Silbury Hill, a project of almost unbelievable scale. What you're looking at isn't just a random collection of monuments, it's a coordinated, staggeringly ambitious building program that went on for 1,000 years. This was the work of a stable, organized, and powerful society. The sheer amount of labor tells us that thousands of people from all over the region had to be involved. They all shared a vision, a belief system that they literally built into the earth. This was their sacred capital. Stonehenge may have been a specialized temple, an architectural wonder, but the Avebury landscape was the heartland. It was a place for the living and the dead, for massive public ceremonies and deep ancestral worship. It was a sprawling ritual complex on a scale that has no equal. So, if Avebury was so much bigger and arguably more important, Why does it live in Stonehenge's shadow? Why was this prehistoric metropolis almost completely forgotten? The answer is a story of destruction and rediscovery. While Stonehenge stood way out on a military plain, mostly untouched, Avebury was a living place. In the Middle Ages, a village started to grow up inside the monument. For a while, the village and the stones coexisted. But then, in the late medieval period, a new kind of religious paranoia took over. The ancient stones were seen as pagan idols, evil relics from a devil-worshipping past that had to be wiped clean from a good Christian landscape. And so, the destruction began. Local people, probably encouraged by the church, started toppling and burying the giant stones. They'd dig a huge pit next to a stone, light massive fires at its base to heat the rock glowing hot, and then douse it with cold water to crack it. Then, with ropes and levers, they'd heave the monolith into the pit and bury it, just erasing it from sight. And we have this tragic, unbelievable snapshot of this process thanks to a freak accident. In 1938, an archaeologist named Alexander Keeler was digging at Avebury and found a skeleton crushed underneath one of these toppled stones. With the skeleton was a leather pouch with coins from the 1320s, a pair of scissors, and a medical probe. He became known as the barber surgeon of Avebury, apparently killed in the middle of the act of burying one of the great stones. His bad luck gives us a chillingly precise date for this era of destruction. This went on for centuries. A lot of stones were just broken up for building material for the houses you can still see today. By the time guys like John Aubrey and William Stukeley showed up in the 17th and 18th centuries, the site was a wreck. They frantically drew and measured what was left, saving the memory of Avebury's original layout just as it was disappearing. It wasn't until the 1930s that this guy, Alexander Keeler, an heir to a marmalade fortune of all things, bought the site and started the massive job of finding the buried stones and putting them back up, basically saving Avebury from being lost forever. In the end, comparing Stonehenge and Avebury isn't about which one is better. They're two parts of the same incredible story. They show us different sides of the Neolithic mind, the precise astronomical genius of Stonehenge, and the vast, communal, earth-shaping spirit of Avebury. But the story of Avebury changes everything. It shows us that the world of our ancestors was bigger, more complex, and way more ambitious than we ever gave them credit for. It reveals a society that could organize itself over 1,000 years to create a sprawling, sacred landscape, a true city of stone and earth. So the next time you see a picture of Stonehenge, remember its giant, mysterious neighbor. Remember the house of the ancestors on the ridge and that bizarre man-made mountain that's holding on to its secrets. Remember the lost world of Avebury, a world that proves the most incredible stories are often the ones that have been hiding in plain sight all along. Khafre's Valley Temple, the mystery of the 200-ton granite blocks. There are these structures all over the world that they defy logic. They shouldn't be there. But nothing hits you like the Giza Plateau in Egypt. It's just, the past is right there in your face. For thousands of years, the Great Pyramids have been these cosmic landmarks, completely dominating the horizon. Right next to them, you have the Great Sphinx, just silently staring out, guarding who knows what. But here's the thing. In the shadow of these icons, there's another structure, one that's arguably one of the most baffling and insane things ever built. It's Khafre's Valley Temple. At first glance, it looks almost modern, like some kind of brutalist concrete box. But when you get inside, you're walking through a question that has stumped engineers for centuries. The walls are made of granite blocks, and while many are smaller, some are estimated to weigh up to 100, maybe even 200 tons. And they didn't get them from down the street. These stones were quarried and shipped over 500 miles from Aswan. Think about that. That would be a monster project for us today with all our technology. The official story is that they did all of this with simple copper tools, wooden sleds, and pure manpower. But is that the whole picture? How does a civilization, supposedly using just chisels that are too soft for granite and stone pounders, cut, lift, and assemble these giants with such insane precision that you can't even fit a human hair between the joints? Are we missing something? Are we looking at the echoes of a lost technology we've completely forgotten? To really get the mystery here, you gotta know where to look. It's tucked away near the Sphinx, overshadowed by the giant pyramids, and a lot of people don't give it a second thought. For centuries, it was completely buried under sand, which is why it's one of the best preserved temples from the Old Kingdom. When it was finally dug out in the 1800s by a French archaeologist named Auguste Mariette, the world got a look at a building that was basically frozen in time. Officially, they say the temple was built for the pharaoh Khafre around 2570 BCE. It was a spiritual place, a gateway for the pharaoh's last trip. His body would arrive by boat from the Nile, and inside these walls, they performed sacred rituals like the opening of the mouth ceremony, which they believe let the soul get back into the body for the afterlife. Then they take him up to his pyramid. The design is all about raw, minimalist power. There's a T-shaped hall with these massive square pillars of solid red granite, and their surfaces are polished like a mirror. The floor was paved with gleaming white alabaster. But here's where it gets weird. Unlike later Egyptian temples that are covered in stories and art, these walls are almost completely bare. No intricate hieroglyphs, no paintings of big battles. The story of this temple isn't in words, it's in the stone itself. The core of it is built from huge limestone blocks that were quarried right there on the plateau, and these blocks are massive in their own right. But the real mindbender, the thing that makes this an engineering puzzle, is what's on the outside of that limestone core. The whole place was cased in these enormous, perfectly fitted slabs of red and pink granite. And that granite came from Aswan, more than 500 miles south. This is where the story goes from history to just a profound mystery. So the puzzle of the Valley Temple really comes down to three things that just sound impossible: the weight, the distance, and the precision. You put them all together, and you have something that completely challenges what we think we know about the ancient world. First, let's just talk about the weight. The blocks in the pyramids average about 2.5 tons each, a huge lift, but manageable. The blocks in the Valley Temple are a whole other species. The limestone core blocks are gigantic, with some estimates putting them at over 100 tons each. But the granite casing stones are the true titans. While a lot of them are smaller, some of the biggest are estimated by researchers to weigh between 100 and 200 tons. To give you some perspective, a 200-ton block is the same weight as a modern diesel locomotive. It's like 30 adult elephants. Even today, with all our massive mobile cranes and heavy-duty trucks, moving a single 200-ton object is a huge deal. It takes serious planning and specialized gear. The builders of this temple did it over and over again. Second, the distance is just staggering. These granite monsters were cut out of the bedrock at Aswan, which is over 500 miles away by river. Just try to imagine the job. First, you have to somehow cut a 200-ton block free from the earth in one piece. Then you have to get it from the quarry to the Nile, then load it onto a boat that can carry that weight without snapping in half, then sail it for 500 miles, unload it, and finally drag it into its exact spot in the temple. Every single step in that chain is more daunting than the last. Finally, and this might be the most mind-bending part of all, is the precision. They didn't just stack these things like rough boulders. The granite blocks are fitted together with a level of accuracy that is just breathtaking. There's no mortar. The stones are fused together so tightly you can't slip a piece of paper, let alone a razor blade, between them. And this is true for flat surfaces and for complex, multi-angled corners. They fit together like some kind of colossal 3D jigsaw puzzle. This isn't just construction, it's megalithic art. And it makes you ask, how the hell did they do that? When you ask how they built the Valley Temple, the mainstream Egyptology explanation comes down to three things: ingenuity, a ton of manpower, and a lot of time. And you have to say, the organizational skills of the ancient Egyptians were absolutely extraordinary. The official story goes something like this. They quarried the granite in Aswan by pounding it with dolerite balls, a rock that's harder than granite, to carve out trenches. They might have also used fire and water to heat and crack the rock, or hammered wet wooden wedges into cracks to split the stone. Once the blocks were free, they were probably moved on wooden sledges pulled by hundreds or thousands of guys, maybe wetting the sand in front to make it easier. At the river, they'd load them onto enormous barges. The yearly Nile flood was key, because the high water would let the barges get closer to the construction sites. Recent discoveries even show there was a whole harbor system right at the Giza Plateau. Once they got to Giza, the blocks were hauled up huge earthen ramps into position, where they were finished and muscled into place with levers and sheer force. Simple machines, massive labor, brilliant logistics. On the surface, it sounds plausible. It shows a lot of respect for the builders. But when you really zoom in on the Valley Temple, some serious cracks start to show in that story. The simple tools, explanation just starts to feel weak. Let's start with quarrying. Pounding granite with stone balls is painfully slow. And the tools? The main metal tool they had was the copper chisel, and copper is way too soft to cut Aswan granite. It's fine for limestone, but it would just bend against granite. So were they really just pounding these massive blocks into perfect shape? Then there's the transport. The physics of loading a 100 or 200-ton block onto a wooden boat is a complete nightmare. That much focused weight could easily break the boat's spine or just flip it over. This would take a level of naval engineering that's way beyond what we think the Old Kingdom had. And finally, the placement. Hauling a megalith up a ramp is one thing, but how do you then gently nudge it into a perfect fit against its neighbors with zero gaps? How do you shave off the last few millimeters of hard granite, especially in tight corners, with nothing but stone pounders? The official explanation tends to gloss over these details, the very details that make the temple so incredible. Some engineers argue that no amount of time or labor with those tools can explain the results we see. The problem isn't just what they did, it's how. What piece are we missing? When the conventional story feels like it's missing something, the only place left to look is the evidence itself, the stones. And if you look at the Valley Temple like an investigator, you find details that just make the mystery even deeper. Let's talk about tool marks. This is a huge point of debate. Mainstream archaeologists say the surfaces were finished by pounding and grinding with stone tools. But some researchers, like the engineer Christopher Dunn, have spent their careers looking at these granite surfaces, and they claim the evidence tells a different story. They point to things like perfectly flat planes over huge surfaces and sharp, precise internal corners that seem almost impossible to make with a pounding tool. They think the marks look more like they were made by some kind of large saw or advanced cutting machine. Now, that idea is extremely controversial, and mainstream Egyptology doesn't accept it, but it makes you wonder about the tools they really had. Then there's the building style itself. They didn't always use simple rectangular blocks. In some places, they used polygonal masonry, where the blocks are cut into these complex, irregular shapes that interlock perfectly. We see the same style in other mysterious ancient sites, like in Peru. Why would you go to all that extra trouble when square blocks are so much easier? One theory is that this design is way more stable, especially against earthquakes. Could that be evidence of a deep understanding of structural engineering, a knowledge of how to build for eternity? But maybe the most controversial clue is the weathering. The core of the temple is made of huge limestone blocks, and those were then covered by the granite casing stones. Here's the mystery. The limestone blocks inside show signs of major erosion. Since the temple was buried in sand for most of its history, how did that happen? Some geologists, like Dr. Robert Schoch, have a radical theory about this. He argues that the erosion patterns on the limestone core, and more famously on the Sphinx and its enclosure walls where these blocks were quarried, don't look like they were caused by wind and sand. He says it looks like water erosion, the kind caused by a lot of rainfall over a long time. The problem with that? The climate in Giza has been desert dry for the last 5,000 years. To get the kind of rain needed for that erosion, you'd have to go back to a time before 5000 BCE, thousands of years before Khafre was even born. This has led to the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis, which suggests the original structures at Giza, including the core of this temple, might be way older than we think. It suggests Khafre wasn't the original builder, but maybe he just found and repaired a much more ancient site. This is still one of the biggest fights in Egyptology, but it opens up a fascinating possibility. When the facts and the stones themselves leave all these questions open, you're going to get new theories, ideas that go way beyond the standard textbook answer. The puzzles of the Valley Temple, the insane weights, the precision, the weird erosion, have become the foundation for speculating about a lost chapter of human history. This isn't about aliens. It's about questioning the simple, straight-line story of our past, where we went from primitive too advanced. What if that's not the whole story? What if the people who built the Valley Temple didn't invent these techniques, but inherited them from a much older tradition of knowledge that's now lost? This idea of a lost technology or a predecessor civilization suggests that the skills we see at Giza were the final product of a long history that we have no record of. Maybe a sophisticated culture existed in the very distant past that understood mechanics and engineering on a whole different level. Maybe that culture was wiped out by a cataclysm and they left behind only these silent stone monuments. The dynastic Egyptians might have found them and tried to copy them, but never quite replicated the original quality. The fact that the Valley Temple's walls are so bare, so different from later Egyptian temples, is seen by people who hold this theory as a huge clue that it belongs to a different, more ancient people. This is all speculation, but it's a powerful idea born from the fact that our conventional explanations just don't seem to fit the evidence we can see with our own eyes. Khafre's Valley Temple is still standing today, and it's a monument to a massive engineering mystery. We're looking at a structure built on an almost impossible scale with the precision of a jeweler. We have gigantic granite blocks, brought over vast distances and put together in a seamless, mortarless hug that has lasted for thousands of years. We have the official story, a tale of incredible human will, brilliant logistics, and simple tools pushed to their absolute breaking point. It's an amazing narrative of human achievement, but it leaves you with nagging questions. It asks us to believe they did all this without the wheel for transport, without iron tools for cutting, and with only the most basic grasp of mechanics. And then you have the clues in the stone itself, the potential tool marks from advanced machines, the sophisticated earthquake-resistant construction, and the controversial erosion that could mean this place is thousands of years older than we think. So what's the real story of the Valley Temple? Is it the ultimate achievement of Old Kingdom builders pushing simple tech to its absolute limit? Or is it something else? A silent stone giant guarding the memory of a lost technology, a forgotten age of genius. What are we missing? Let us know what you think in the comments below. High up in the Peruvian Andes, looking over the old city of Cusco, there's a structure that is just mind-blowing. It's like a fortress built by giants, a massive 3-level wall of stone that zigs and zags and seems to just laugh at physics and time. This place is called Sacsayhuamán, and it's an architectural wonder that hints at some kind of lost, almost unbelievable technology. The stones here aren't just big, they're colossal. They aren't just stacked, they're fused together with a precision that would give even our modern machines a run for their money. For centuries, people have looked at this place with total awe and a whole lot of questions. How did a 15th century civilization, a civilization with no iron tools, no wheels, and no written architectural plans, build something this massive? This isn't just some old history question. It's an engineering puzzle that still stumps some of the smartest people today. The story of Sacsayhuamán is more than just a cool construction story. It's a direct challenge to how we think about the past and a serious reality check about human ingenuity. This is Sacsayhuamán, a fortress in the Andes Mountains of Peru. The stones you're seeing weigh over 100 tons, with some estimates hitting a crazy 200 tons. They're fitted together so perfectly that for hundreds of years, you couldn't even slip a piece of paper between them. But here's the real kicker. The Inca, the people who built this, had no iron tools, no wheels, and no written language to pass down their insane plans. So, how the hell did they pull off something that would be a nightmare for the best engineering firms today? Even with our cranes, our lasers, and our supercomputers, trying to rebuild Sacsayhuamán would be a beast of a project. In this video, we're going to Peru to try and figure out the secrets of a technology that we still can't explain. To really get your head around the puzzle of Sacsayhuamán, you first have to understand the insane scale of what we're looking at. The place is huge, with these 3 iconic terraced walls stretching for almost 600 meters in a crazy zigzag pattern. But it's the individual stones that just make you stop and stare. The biggest one, this monster limestone block, is estimated to weigh somewhere between 108 and 200 tons. That's like 30 elephants or a whole passenger jet. Some of these stones are over 8.5 meters or 28 feet tall. That's as high as a 3-story building. Just think about that for a second. An ancient people, with none of the heavy machinery we take for granted, somehow quarried, moved, and lifted stones this big. And the quarries weren't right next door. Some of these stones were dragged from sites miles away, over insane mountain terrain. The logistics of that alone are just staggering, but the weight and size are only half the story. The real genius of Sacsayhuamán is how the stones are joined. These aren't just simple rectangular bricks stacked up. They're these complex, polygonal shapes, some with more than a dozen angles that lock together like a 3D jigsaw puzzle. Each stone was carved to fit its neighbors with what looks like microscopic precision. The seams are so tight that, like people have been saying for centuries, you can't fit a single piece of paper between them. And this wasn't just to look cool. This technique, called dry stone masonry, is the reason Sacsayhuamán is still standing. For over 500 years, these walls have survived in one of the most earthquake-prone regions on the planet. When massive earthquakes hit, the Spanish colonial buildings in Cusco crumbled, but Sacsayhuamán held strong. The wild, mortar-free design lets the stones dance with the seismic waves, moving just enough and then settling right back into place. The walls also lean inward, which adds another layer of stability against the ground shaking. It's a kind of earthquake proofing so advanced, it seems like they could see the future. This wasn't just building, it was like they were having a conversation with the earth itself, showing a deep understanding of geology and physics that was centuries ahead of its time. The question isn't just what's they built, but how they knew to build it like this. Faced with a structure that just seems impossible, modern archaeology has tried to come up with an explanation. The mainstream theory paints a picture of unbelievable human effort, smarts, and just plain brute force. According to this idea, building Sacsayhuamán was a massive government project ordered by the great Inca ruler Pachacuti in the 15th century. It supposedly involved a ridiculous number of workers, maybe 20,000 to 30,000 men, drafted through the Incas' super-organized labor system, the Mita. The theory basically goes like this. Huge teams of guys would find these giant boulders and quarries, some as far as 22 miles away. Using harder cobblestones and maybe some bronze tools, they'd just pound and chip away at the giant rocks, slowly shaping them. To move them, they'd get thousands of men to pull the stones with thick ropes, probably made of llama wool, maybe rolling them on logs or slick clay beds to make it easier. To get them up the last hill to the building site, they would have had to build these huge earthen ramps. Once a stone was on site, the really insane work would start. The process of fitting them together is thought to have been this incredibly careful process of trial and error. Masons would somehow lift a new, giant stone into place over the one below it. Then, they'd trace the complex shape of the bottom stone onto the top one. After that, they'd lower the stone, grind it down with stone hammers and sand and water, then hoist it back up to see if it fit. They'd do this over and over and over again until the fit was absolutely perfect. On the surface, it sounds possible. It uses materials we know they had in a process that's logical, even if it's crazy hard. The Inca were master organizers, we know that. There's no doubt that manpower was a huge part of it. People have done experiments that show it's possible to move big stones with enough people. And yet, for anyone who's actually stood in front of these walls, that explanation just doesn't feel right. It feels incomplete. Could you really get that smooth, almost pillow-like finish on a 200-ton block just by hitting it with rocks? The surface of many of these stones looks glassy, almost vitrified, with rounded edges that look more melted than chiseled. And what about the precision? That trial and error method would have been painfully slow and so easy to screw up. One wrong move on a multi-ton stone and it's useless, forcing them to start all over. Computer models that have tried to simulate the construction have suggested it might have taken over a century, way longer than the official estimates. The official story asks us to believe that all of this moving stones that weigh as much as a jet, fitting them with insane precision and creating a nearly indestructible earthquake-proof building, was done with just ropes, ramps, and rocks. While it gives the Inca credit for being incredibly persistent, it leaves a lot of big questions on the table, and it really pushes what we think is possible with so-called primitive technology. It's in those cracks in the official story that some more interesting and controversial theories start to pop up. When the Spanish conquistadors showed up in the 16th century, Sacsayhuamán completely blew their minds. They wrote about it like it was the work of demons or giants because they just couldn't wrap their heads around how it was built. And here's a critical point. With all their iron tools and European know-how, they were totally unable to copy the Inca's stonework. They even took Sacsayhuamán apart to build their own churches in Cusco, but the new buildings were garbage by comparison, using smaller stones and mortar that later crumbled in the same earthquakes the Inca walls survived. That single fact is one of the strongest arguments against the conventional story. If it was just about manpower and simple tools, why couldn't the Spanish, who saw the Inca culture up close, do it themselves? This huge hole in our understanding has led to all sorts of wild theories. One of the most fascinating is the idea of a lost technology for softening stone. According to legends and guys like the explorer Percy Fawcett, the Inca might have known about certain plants whose juices could make rock soft, almost like clay. People who believe this point to the weird, almost molded look of many of the stones. They think the Inca would put this plant liquid on the stones, push them together, and let them harden into a perfect fit. Some researchers have even thrown out the idea of a geopolymer, or a kind of concrete, and a Russian study even found evidence that the stones might have been exposed to high heat, suggesting they could have been made from some kind of limestone paste. Another theory, and this one is really out there, gets into acoustics. Is it possible the Inca figured out sonic levitation? Local legends talk about priests using sound like chants or instruments to make giant stones float through the air. This sounds like straight-up science fiction, but supporters point to modern lab experiments where sound waves are used to lift small objects. They ask, could the Inca have found a way to do this on a massive scale? There's zero direct evidence for this, but the idea sticks around because it's one way to explain the insane task of moving 200-ton blocks over mountains and putting them in place with perfect accuracy. Then there's the inheritance theory. Some people think Sacsayhuamán is way older than the Inca. They point to different styles in the stonework, the massive, perfectly fitted walls at the bottom, and smaller, cruder stonework on top that we know was Inca repair work. This has led to the idea that the Inca didn't build the main walls at all. Instead, they found the ruins of a much older, unknown, and maybe more advanced civilization and just built on top of them. These theories, stone softening plants, acoustic levitation, ancient concrete, a pre-Inca civilization, are usually dismissed by mainstream archaeologists because there's no hard proof. They're definitely on the fringe. But they don't go away because they address a key problem. The official story, as logical as it tries to be, just doesn't fully explain the sheer impossibility of Sacsayhuamán. It doesn't explain the smooth, pillowy surfaces, the crazy perfect joints, or why the Spanish couldn't copy it. It leaves you with this nagging feeling that we're missing a huge piece of the puzzle, a lost chapter of human history with a technology that has just vanished. So after all the analysis, after looking at the official story and the wilder theories, where are we? We're left standing in front of these silent, massive stones, and the mystery feels as deep as ever. Sacsayhuamán isn't a problem with an easy answer. It's a monument that makes us question the limits of what we think we know. The mainstream idea of massive manpower and painful trial and error is a testament to what humans can do when they work together. It paints a picture of a society so focused that it could literally move mountains. And yet, that story feels stretched thin when you see how perfect the final result is. The precision, the complex shapes, the earthquake-proof design, it all hints at a level of knowledge that seems to go way beyond simple tools and muscle. The alternative theories, even without solid proof, grab our imagination because they offer a possible key to unlock this mystery. Whether it was a lost plant secret that let them mold stone, a mastery of sound that defied gravity, or knowledge passed down from a forgotten civilization, these ideas speak to that gut feeling that something truly extraordinary happened here. New discoveries, like the recent confirmation of a network of underground tunnels connecting Sacsayhuamán to Cusco's Temple of the Sun, just make the whole thing even more mysterious, showing a sacred landscape that's even more complex than we ever thought. Maybe the real answer is somewhere in between, a combination of insane human effort guided by a lost science that we haven't rediscovered yet. Or maybe, like some Inca myths suggest, the stones themselves were seen as living beings, and the builders worked in harmony with them, a concept so alien to how we see the world that we can barely even imagine it. Ultimately, Sacsayhuamán is a powerful and humbling slap in the face to our modern ego. It's a silent, stone guard that reminds us that our ancestors weren't primitive. They were masters of their world, brilliant engineers, and keepers of a knowledge that we, with all our tech, may have lost. The walls of Sacsayhuamán don't just guard the ancient city of Cusco, they guard a secret. And for now, that secret is safe, locked away in the impossible joints of 200-ton stones that continue to blow our minds. What we do know is that the story of humanity is way more complex and mysterious than we're usually taught. Moai statues, Easter Island, the walking stones mystery. There's this mystery that for centuries has completely stumped scientists. It's a puzzle so wild it's made people talk about aliens and lost technology. It boils down to simple, brutal physics. How did the ancient people of Easter Island, a tiny, remote island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, move 14-ton statues, some as tall as a 3-story building, over 11 miles of rugged terrain? This isn't just about lifting something heavy. We're talking about almost 900 of these giant human figures, carved from solid rock, all transported from one quarry and set up all around the island's coast. For decades, the main theory was this grim story about a society that destroyed itself. The idea was they cut down every last tree on their island to roll these stone giants, and in the process drove their own civilization into collapse. The oral traditions of the Rapa Nui people, the islanders themselves, who always insisted the statues walked to their spots, were just dismissed as some charming but primitive folklore. But then, a crazy experiment in 2012 basically proved those legends were true, and it will completely change what you think you know about one of history's greatest puzzles. To really get your head around this, you have to understand just how isolated Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, actually is. It's over 2,000 miles from Chile and more than 1,000 miles from the nearest inhabited island. It's one of the most remote places on Earth. And yet, on this little patch of land, a civilization popped up and decided to take on one of the most insane engineering projects in human history. The statues are called Moai. We know of 887 of them, and they are just breathtaking. The average one is about 13 feet tall and weighs a staggering 14 tons. Try to picture something the height of a giraffe that weighs as much as 2 big elephants, carved out of a single piece of stone. And that's just the average. The tallest Moai ever finished, a monster named Peru, was almost 33 feet tall and weighed over 80 tons before it got knocked over. If you stood it up in a city today, it would be staring into a 3rd-story window. Every single one of these statues started its life at the same spot, a volcanic crater called Rano Raraku. This is where hundreds of carvers, using just stone tools, chipped away at the volcanic rock to free these giants. You can still see it today. The quarry is this surreal landscape of half-carved figures, like they're frozen in time, some still stuck to the cliff face. But the real mystery kicks in once a statue was finished. They were all meant for these ceremonial platforms called ahu all along the coast. The trip from the quarry to the farthest platform was a brutal 11 miles. So the question that's been haunting people for generations is brutally simple. How? They had no wheels. They had no cranes. They had no animals like horses or oxen to pull things. The island itself is all rolling hills and volcanic rock, not some smooth highway. How, with only human muscle, rope, and Stone Age tools, did they move hundreds of these 14-ton monuments across that kind of landscape? It seems to fly in the face of physics and common sense. When you're faced with a problem this weird, your imagination can run wild. And with Easter Island, it definitely did. Of course, you get the ancient alien guys jumping all over this. The idea that aliens must have used some kind of advanced tech to move the Moai is a popular one, but it's an explanation that just completely underestimates what people are capable of. There's zero evidence, just a dismissal of the Rapa Nui people's ingenuity. For most of the 20th century, scientists settled on a more believable, but, as it turns out, deeply flawed theory. They rolled them on logs. The idea was that the Rapa Nui cut down all the palm trees, laid them on the ground as rollers, put the Moai on their backs on some kind of wooden sled, and then just dragged them for miles. This seemed to make sense, and it fit into this powerful, tragic story that became world famous, the story of ecocide. This ecocide theory, made famous by the scientist Jared Diamond, paints the Rapa Nui as being obsessed with outdoing each other. Competing clans were supposedly trying to build bigger and bigger statues for status. To move them, they recklessly chopped down every tree on the island. This led to soil erosion, the collapse of their farming, starvation, war, and finally, the complete breakdown of their society. When Europeans showed up in 1722, they supposedly found a broken people living in the ruins they had created. A dark warning for the rest of us about mismanaging our environment. It's a powerful story. But what if it's totally wrong? For years, archaeologists have been finding little bits of evidence that chip away at this whole tragedy. For one, the number of trees you'd need is just insane. Moving hundreds of these things from miles on wood rollers would have eaten up an entire forest. On top of that, studies of the island's ancient pollen show that something else was probably a major cause of the deforestation, the Pacific rat, which came with the first settlers and ate all the palm nuts so the trees couldn't grow back. The ecocide story, while it makes for a good warning, was just too simple. It made the Rapa Nui seem irrational and self-destructive. But maybe the biggest knock against the log-rolling theory was that it completely ignored what the Rapa Nui people themselves had been saying for centuries. So, if they weren't rolling them, how in the world did they do it? When the first European explorers showed up, they asked the islanders that exact question. The answer they got was strange, cryptic, and totally unbelievable. The statues, the Rapa Nui said, didn't need to be dragged. They had mana, a spiritual power, and they walked from the quarry to the platforms all by themselves. For centuries, everyone just blew this off as a myth. To a Western scientist, it just sounds like a fairy tale, a metaphor at best. How could a 14-ton rock possibly walk? But two American archaeologists, Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo, decided to question that assumption. They started their research in 2001, and they actually went there expecting to just add more detail to the ecocide theory, but what they found took them in a totally different direction. They decided to do something radical. They took the oral history of the Rapa Nui seriously. They started by looking at the statues that didn't make it. All along the old roads from the quarry, there are dozens of fallen Moai. And Hunt and Lipo noticed something critical about these road Moai. They were built differently. The statues on the platforms have flat bases so they can stand up straight. But the road Moai had D-shaped bases that were angled forward. They were literally built to lean forward to be off balance. If you tried to stand one up, it would just fall on its face. This was a mind-blowing revelation. The statues weren't just giant dead weights to be dragged, they were dynamic machines, engineered specifically for transport. That forward lean and the curved base meant they were designed to fall forward in a controlled way. Suddenly, the idea of walking didn't sound so metaphorical. Hunt and Lipo figured the islanders used ropes to rock the statues from side to side. With each rock, the curved edge of the base would pivot forward, letting the statue sort of shuffle and waddle. The statue would literally take a step. The legend wasn't a legend at all, it was a technical manual. A theory is one thing, but you gotta prove it. To test their idea, Hunt and Lipo, working with National Geographic and the Rapa Nui, ran a landmark experiment in 2012. This was the moment of truth that would either prove their theory right or send them back to square one. They made a precise replica of a road Moai, 10 feet tall, 5 tons. Not the biggest one, but still a beast of a rock. They gathered a small team of just 18 people with nothing but 3 strong ropes. They didn't have some ancient instruction manual, they had to rediscover the technique right then and there. With one team pulling a rope from the left and another from the right, they started rocking the statue. A third team at the back held another rope to act as a brake to keep the forward-leaning giant from face-planting. At first, it was tough, but then, as the teams found a rhythm, something incredible happened. The huge stone figure started to sway, like a slow, heavy dance. Rock left, pivot forward. Rock right, pivot forward. It was working. The statue was walking. Slowly but surely, the 5-ton Moai shuffled across the ground, and its movement looked almost exactly like a person waddling. It wasn't fast, but it was incredibly efficient. The experiment was a massive success. The team moved the replica over 100 yards in less than an hour. They showed that a small group of people, with just ropes and a smart understanding of physics, could move a colossal statue. The energy needed was surprisingly low once you got it rocking. As Carl Lipo said, once you get it going, it's not hard at all. This method suddenly explained so much. It explained the weird D-shaped base of the road Moai. It explained why so many of the fallen statues were found face down on downhill slopes and on their backs on uphill slopes they had just tipped over during their walk. And most importantly, it validated the knowledge of the Rapa Nui ancestors. While it doesn't prove every single legend, it provides incredible evidence for the core idea. The statues did walk. The legends were true. Confirming the walking method isn't just about solving a moving puzzle, it completely flips our whole understanding of Easter Island's history on its head. It dismantles that tragic, condescending story of a self-destructive people and replaces it with a story of brilliant, resilient innovators. Think about what this means. The Rapa Nui weren't just reckless fools who wrecked their own paradise. They were genius engineers who came up with a sustainable, low-impact way to do something monumental. They didn't need to cut down their whole forest for rollers because they had a much smarter solution that just required rope and teamwork. This totally pulls the rug out from under the ecocide collapse theory, and the new evidence doesn't stop there. Recent scientific work has put the final nails in the coffin of that old collapse narrative. Modern DNA studies have looked at ancient Rapa Nui genomes and found no evidence of a population crash before Europeans got there. In fact, the population seems to have been stable and growing right up until contact, when outsiders brought devastating diseases and slave raids that truly decimated the islanders. On top of that, satellite imaging has shown that the islanders had sophisticated farming techniques. They built these extensive rock gardens where they enriched the poor volcanic soil with stones to hold in moisture and release nutrients. This let them support a stable population of a few thousand people for centuries, living in balance with what they had. The story of Easter Island isn't one of failure, it's a story of incredible success and resilience in one of the toughest environments on the planet. The walking statues are the ultimate symbol of this new history. They aren't monuments to a society's madness and self-destruction. They're testaments to its genius, its teamwork, and its deep connection to ancestral wisdom. The journey to understand how the Moai moved has taken us from being skeptical and dismissive to a place of genuine respect. We've gone from popular myths of self-destruction to the vindicated oral histories of the Rapa Nui people. The image of those colossal statues rocking and waddling their way across the island is a powerful reminder that our assumptions about the past are often more primitive than the methods of the people who lived it. The walking statues of Easter Island don't stand as a warning of failure, but as a monument to the incredible power of human innovation. It makes you wonder what other ancient legends are actually just technical manuals that we're not smart enough to read yet. Newgrange, Ireland, older than pyramids, aligned to winter solstice. It's wild to think about. 500 years before the Egyptians even started on the Great Pyramid at Giza, you had these Stone Age people in Ireland building something just as mind-blowing. These were farmers, astronomers, and engineers. And get this, they did it with no metal tools, no wheel, just rocks, wood, and pure human grit. They built this massive 200,000-ton monument that held a secret so incredible it sounds like something out of a movie. This thing was built to do one specific thing: capture the light of the winter solstice sun for just 17 minutes a year. It's this silent proof that these ancient people were trying to map their world to the stars, to sync their entire lives to the rhythm of the cosmos. For thousands of years, nobody knew what it was for. It was just this giant mound, buried under dirt and legends. This is the story of Newgrange. It's a tomb that's older than the pyramids, a temple built for the sun, and a giant clock made of stone and light. We're going to explore how the hell they pulled this off, and more importantly, try to figure out why. So you go to Ireland, right? To this place in County Meath called Brú na Bóinne. It literally means the Palace of the Boyne. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site for a reason. The whole area is just packed with these ancient monuments. You've got Noath and Dalf, but the main event, the real showstopper, is Newgrange. From a distance, it just looks like a huge grassy hill, kind of kidney-shaped, covering over an acre. But when you get closer, you see this incredible wall of bright white quartz stones. They dragged these things from the Wicklow Mountains, over 50 kilometers away. And the wall is broken up by these big, rounded granite boulders that they hauled from the Mourne Mountains, also about 50 kilometers away. I mean, just pause and think about that. This is a society with no complex machinery, zero. Yet they're transporting thousands of tons of specific, decorative stones across huge distances. The logistics are just insane. The mound itself is made of an estimated 200,000 tons of stone and earth layered perfectly. To give you an idea of what that means, that's about the weight of a modern aircraft carrier, and it was all built by hand. They built this thing around 3200 BCE. That makes it 500 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza and a full 1,000 years older than the famous version of Stonehenge. And these weren't just guys piling up rocks. They were masters. For over 5,000 years, the roof inside has been completely watertight. Think about that. They built a roof out of giant, overlapping stones that has stayed dry for 5 millennia. Most houses built today can't even do that. But it wasn't just about building something big, it was art. At the base, there are 97 massive stones called curbstones, and a lot of them are covered in this crazy megalithic art. The most famous one is right at the entrance. It's a 5-ton slab of rock carved with these mesmerizing spirals and patterns. The big one is a triple spiral, a triskel, that's become a famous symbol of ancient Ireland. And what's really interesting is that this art is at least 2,500 years older than the Celts, so this is a purely Neolithic Irish thing. So what does it all mean? Archaeologists don't think it was just for decoration. A lot of the carvings are in places that would have been in total darkness once the tomb was sealed, which suggests they were for the gods or the spirits of the dead, not for people. For centuries, everyone just thought Newgrange was a fancy tomb. They did find human remains inside, so it was definitely a tomb for some important people. But the sheer scale and effort involved just screamed that there was something more going on. This wasn't just a grave, it was a statement of power, of knowledge, and a deep connection to the sky. The people who built it, this Boyne culture, were Ireland's first farmers. Their entire lives revolved around the seasons, planting crops, and the sun. And that relationship with the sun is where the real secret is. The question wasn't just how they built it, but why they built it with such insane precision. What was the secret hidden inside? For thousands of years, Newgrange just sat there, its biggest secret completely hidden in the dark. The entrance caved in, grass grew over it, and it just became another hill. It was basically forgotten until 1699, when some workers who were digging it up for stone accidentally found the entrance. But even then, for almost 300 more years, nobody knew its real purpose. They just thought it was a cool cave or a tomb. The truth was finally uncovered by one guy, Professor Michael J. O'Kelly, an Irish archaeologist. Between 1962 and 1975, he led this massive project to excavate and restore the whole site. While he was working, he kept hearing these old local legend stories that said on the shortest day of the year, the sun would shine right into the tomb. He was fascinated by this, and by this weird little box-like opening right above the main door, which he called the roof box. So, he decided, what the hell, I'll check it out. Picture this, it's the morning of December 21st, 1967. O'Kelly is standing alone inside this ancient tomb, in pitch-black silence, just waiting. He later wrote about how completely stunned he was when the sun started to rise. A narrow beam of sunlight shot through that roof box, hit the floor of the 19-meter-long passage, and just started creeping forward. As the sun got higher, the beam of light got wider and brighter, moving down the passage like a river of gold. It lit up all the ancient carvings on the walls and finally flooded the main chamber at the center. For about 17 glorious minutes, the whole place was just bathed in sunlight. Then, just as slowly, the light pulled back and the chamber was plunged back into total darkness. O'Kelly was the first person in thousands of years to see it happen, and that discovery completely changed everything we thought we knew about Newgrange and the people who built it. This wasn't a lucky accident. This was deliberate. This was pure genius. The builders had engineered the entire monument around this one moment. The long passage, the roof box, the chamber, it was all perfectly aligned to catch the winter solstice sunrise. The roof box was the key. The main entrance would have been sealed, but this little slot above it acted like a perfectly aimed window. The alignment is so precise that the light comes in at the exact angle needed to light up the floor of the final chamber, not the back wall. Modern science has confirmed how smart these guys were. They found scratch marks on the giant roof slabs that show the builders were making tiny adjustments, shifting these massive stones until the alignment was perfect. They had built more than a tomb. They'd built a solar calendar, a clock to mark the most important day of the year for a farming society. The winter solstice is the shortest day, the death of the old year, but it's also the promise that the sun is coming back. The light flooding the tomb was a powerful symbol. Life wins over death, light wins over darkness. The people who built Newgrange weren't primitive, not even close. They were incredible astronomers and engineers. They had a deep understanding of how the sun moved, knowledge they passed down for generations, and they built a monument that has worked perfectly for over 5,000 years. The discovery of the alignment proved that Newgrange was a place of immense spiritual power, a temple built for the sun itself. So who the hell were these people? Who were these brilliant engineers and astronomers? For a long time, the common theory was that Newgrange had to have been built for some powerful king or a dynasty of god kings who had this huge workforce at their command. And there's some evidence for that. DNA from remains found in the tomb pointed to a ruling elite, including one guy who was the product of first-degree incest, a practice some royal dynasties used to keep the bloodline pure. But now, newer research is starting to push back on that. Some recent studies are looking at the whole society diet, housing, wealth, and they're not finding much evidence for a big hierarchical system. Instead, they're painting a picture of a more equal society, maybe small groups of people who came together for these massive community projects. According to this newer research, building Newgrange wasn't about serving a king, it was about building a community. It was an act that bonded people together. The people buried inside might have been chosen for their spiritual role or their lineage, not because they were rich and powerful. That changes everything, right? It means those 200,000 tons of stone weren't moved by force, but by a shared belief. The whole community came together to build a calendar for their crops, a temple for their gods, and a monument that defined who they were. But over thousands of years, people forgot who built it, and they did what people always do. They made up stories. Newgrange got woven into Irish mythology. It became known as Escid in Brogach, a gateway to the otherworld and the home of the Tuatha De Danann, who were like a race of Irish gods. Its most famous mythical resident was the Dagda, the High King of the gods. One of the wildest myths is about how the Dagda wanted to hook up with Boann, the goddess of the River Boyne, but her husband was around, so the Dagda used his magic to make the sun stand still for 9 months, making it seem like only one day had passed. In that single, magical day, their son Angus, the god of love, was conceived and born inside Newgrange. It's an insane story, but listen to what it's really saying. The sun god's light enters the chamber, the womb, on the day the sun stands still, which is what solstice means. The birth of the new god is the rebirth of the sun. It's mind-blowing to think that the memory of the astronomical event might have survived for thousands of years as a story, passed down until monks wrote it down. This mix of real-world archaeology and mythology is what makes Newgrange so damn compelling. It's a real physical masterpiece of Stone Age engineering, and it's also a mythical portal to the land of the gods. It was a tomb, a calendar, a temple, and a palace for legends. It was the center of their world. When you step back and look at Newgrange, it's profound. It's a statement about human ingenuity and our search for meaning. Over 5,000 years ago, a community of farmers looked up at the sky, not just with wonder, but with real scientific understanding. They pooled all their energy to build something that was both a tomb for their dead and a massive party for the sun's return. They encoded what they knew about the cosmos into stone and light, and it has lasted for millennia. It just shows you that this need we have to connect with the cosmos to figure out our place in the universe, that's not new. That's ancient. That's built into our DNA. The builders of Newgrange lived in the Stone Age, but they were anything but primitive. They were pioneers. They were astronomers, architects, and artists who left something behind that still blows our minds today. Even now, people gather at Newgrange on the winter solstice, just like they probably did 5,000 years ago. They come to watch that same beam of light cut through the darkness, connecting our world directly to theirs. Newgrange isn't just an old pile of rocks, it's a living bridge to our ancestors, a monument to their genius, and a reminder that even in the deepest darkness, light is coming back. What does it say about us as a species that 5,000 years ago, on this little green island, we were already reaching for the sun? Coral Castle, Florida, one man's megalithic mystery. Down in South Florida near Miami, there's this place that it defies all logic. It's called Coral Castle. But it's not a real castle. It's this insane structure made of oolitic limestone that's a geologically young kind of rock, and it's over 1,000 tons of it. The whole thing was quarried, carved, and put together by one guy, one dude. And this guy, Edward Leedskalnin, was 5 feet tall and weighed 100 pounds. We're talking about single blocks of stone weighing more than an African elephant. And this tiny man did it all by himself. He worked mostly at night, in secret for almost 30 years. And when people asked him, "How the hell are you doing this?" he'd just say he knew the secrets of the guys who built the pyramids. This isn't just a story about some weird tourist spot. It's the story of this guy, Ed Leedskalnin, and the mystery he left behind that still messes with people's minds today. Imagine a man 5 feet tall, 100 pounds, single-handedly building a monument out of multi-ton blocks of stone. He works alone, in the dark, for decades. He claims he figured out how the pyramids were built. Then he dies and takes the secret with him. That's the mystery of what he called Rock Gate Park, the place we now know as Coral Castle. So to even get your head around the how, you gotta start with the why. For that, we go back to the early 1900s in Latvia. This is where we meet Edward Leedskalnin, born in 1887. He was a quiet, private guy with limited formal schooling. Now, the legend, the story that gives this whole thing its heart, is a love story. When Ed was 26, he was engaged to this young woman, Agnes Skufist. He called her his Sweet 16. The day before the wedding, she calls it off, dumps him. Ed is completely heartbroken and humiliated. So he leaves Latvia forever and comes to the US. He just wanders for years, working in lumber camps, a total loner. Eventually, after a battle with tuberculosis, he lands in the warm climate of Florida, in a spot that was pretty much the middle of nowhere, And it's here on this cheap piece of land that the story really kicks off. The official narrative, the one Ed would tell people, was that he was building this whole thing for his lost love, Agnes. This giant stone palace to prove he was worthy, hoping she'd hear about it and come back to him. It's a hell of a romantic story. It even inspired that Billy Idol song, Sweet 16. But, like everything with this guy, the truth is probably way more complicated. Some historians think the whole Agnes story might be more folklore than fact, a tale Ed himself encouraged to build his own mystique. So, was it a broken heart or just a lifelong obsessive need to build something impossible? We don't know. But what we do know is that around 1923, this small, quiet man started a project that would take over the rest of his life and baffle everyone for the next century. He started building his castle. The word castle doesn't really do it justice. What Ed built is weirder, more personal. Using over 1,100 tons of this limestone, he sculpted an entire world. You've got stone rocking chairs that actually rock, a huge heart-shaped table, the famous one some people call the Feast of Love table. He carved beds out of solid rock, a bathtub, a throne. The scale of this stuff is just nuts. The average weight of one of these pieces is around 15 tons. That's like 3 big SUVs carved from one block. The biggest stone is estimated at 29 tons. For comparison, the giant stones at Stonehenge average 25 tons. The blocks of the Great Pyramid are around 2.5 tons. This one dude, Ed Leedskalnin, by himself, was moving stones that were in the same league as ancient wonders built by armies of people. And the precision is what's truly mind-bending. The blocks are fitted together with no mortar, and the seams are so tight you can't see daylight through them. That's why the castle has held up against Florida hurricanes, including Hurricane Andrew in 1992. Andrew flattened the area, but the castle, while it had some minor damage, was largely still standing. He also built a 2-story tower where he lived and worked. No electricity, no running water. And it wasn't just about muscle. The guy was brilliant. He carved a Polaris telescope, a stone shaft aimed perfectly at the North Star, and a sundial that's incredibly accurate. He originally called his creation Rock Gate Park and would give tours for a dime. And every single person who visited had the same question: how? Alright, so if quarrying and building this whole thing by himself wasn't wild enough, in 1936 Ed decides to move. Suburbia was starting to creep in, and he wanted his privacy. So he buys a new plot of land about 10 miles north in what's now Homestead. And then he does something that takes this whole story from incredible to completely impossible. He moves the entire castle. Think about that. This isn't packing up some furniture. This is disassembling and hauling a megalithic structure. He hired a guy with a tractor trailer, but here's the kicker. Ed reportedly made the driver leave the cab and look away whenever he was loading or unloading the stones. He did all the heavy lifting himself, alone, at night. It took him 3 years. 3 years of loading multi-ton stone blocks onto a truck, driving them 10 miles, and reassembling them just as perfectly as before. How does a 100-pound man lift a 29-ton monolith onto a truck? How does he get it back off without it cracking? This move is such a key part of the mystery. It kills any theory that he had some kind of setup unique to the first location. Whatever his secret was, it was portable. It was a technique, a knowledge that he carried with him. He reopened the site, still calling it Rock Gate, and kept on building until he died, leaving us with the puzzle we have today. So, how the hell did he do it? When people pushed him, Ed was vague. His most famous line was, "I have discovered the secrets of the pyramids. I have found out how the Egyptians and the ancient builders raised and set in place blocks of stone weighing many tons." The tools they found on site just make it more confusing. They're on display there today: handmade winches, chains, tripods made of old telephone poles. There's no big cranes, no modern machinery. The tools just look pathetic for the job. It's like trying to build a skyscraper with a couple of hand tools. There aren't many witnesses because he worked in secret. But the few stories that exist are bizarre. Some teenagers who spied on him swore they saw the blocks of stone floating like hydrogen balloons. Now, you can write that off as kids making stuff up, but it feeds into the stranger theories about what he was doing. And Ed himself was the source of these theories. He wasn't just a stonemason, he was obsessed with the unseen world. He did his own experiments and wrote these little pamphlets, one of them called Magnetic Current. In it, he basically says all of modern physics is wrong. He claimed the real force in the universe was a magnetic current made of tiny individual magnets. He wrote, "The real magnet is the substance that is circulating in the metal." He built these weird black boxes with cranks on them. Was that the key? Did he, as some people think, figure out a way to manipulate electromagnetic fields, to somehow reverse or neutralize gravity and make the stones weightless? He talked about understanding weight and leverage, but what he did seems to go way beyond that. His work is just this silent, stone proof of a secret he took to his grave. Was he a master of physics, or was he tapping into something else completely? Because Ed never talked, people have come up with all sorts of theories, from the simple to the straight-up sci-fi. First, there's the mainstream theory. Ed was just a misunderstood genius of simple machines. The people who believe this say that with a crazy good understanding of leverage, counterweights, and balance points, plus a ton of patience, it's technically possible. They point to the tripods and chains in his workshop as proof. The idea is he just slowly, painstakingly inched these blocks into place. No magic, just hard work and a brilliant mind. The problem is, even engineers who back this theory admit they'd have a hard time replicating it today. Then you get into the wild stuff, the ideas from Ed's own writings. This is where you get anti-gravity or acoustic levitation. Some researchers take his magnetic current pamphlets seriously and think he built a machine that created a powerful magnetic field. They theorize it could have neutralized the weight of the rocks, letting him move them easily. This would fit with the floating stones story. Another idea is that he used sound or resonance, that if you find the exact vibrational frequency of a rock, you could make it easier to move. You hear legends about Tibetan monks levitating stones with chanting and horns, same concept. And finally, there's the theory that we should just take the man at his word, that he really did rediscover lost ancient knowledge. I mean, the builders of the pyramids and Stonehenge did things that still blow our minds. Is it possible there was a science for moving massive objects that we'd just forgotten? Maybe Ed, through his obsessive experiments, actually unlocked it. This theory paints him not as some weirdo, but as a link to a long-lost chain of master builders who brought ancient engineering into the 20th century. Every theory has people who swear by it and people who think it's bullshit. But with no final answer from the man himself, Coral Castle is a place where every possibility, from the simple to the supernatural, feels like it could be true. It's a mystery that has stumped engineers for generations. How do you think he did it? Genius use of levers? Some kind of magnetic science? Or something totally different? Let me know what your best theory is in the comments below. I read them all. Of all the crazy things in this place, one piece really sums up Ed's impossible genius, the 9-ton gate. This thing is an 8-foot tall slab of stone that was so perfectly balanced a little kid could push it open with one finger. For decades, it just swung open, smooth and silent. He thought it was so important he originally named the whole park after it. But in 1986, the gate stopped moving. It broke. And when the owners tried to fix it, the story got even crazier. They brought in a team of 6 engineers from the University of Florida. They showed up with a 50-ton crane, a tool way more powerful than anything Ed ever had. It took all 6 of these guys and a massive crane just to take the gate out. When they got it down, they found his secret. Ed had drilled a perfect hole, 8 feet from top to bottom, right through the stone's center of gravity. He stuck a metal shaft in the hole that rested on an old truck bearing. The engineering was brilliant, but the execution was what stumped everyone. How did he drill a perfectly straight 8-foot hole with his primitive tools? And how did he find the stone's exact center of balance, something that would be tough even with modern lasers? The team replaced the bearing, put the gate back with their crane, and they couldn't get it right. It never worked the same way again. It failed again in 2005, and as of today, the gate doesn't swing at all. It's now a static display. A team of modern engineers with advanced equipment could not duplicate what one uneducated man did with handmade junk. The story of the 9-ton gate is the story of Coral Castle in miniature, a puzzle that refuses to give up its secrets even when you take it apart. In December 1951, Ed Leedskalman felt sick. He put a sign on his door that said, "Go into the hospital," took a bus by himself, and checked in. He died in his sleep 28 days later at the age of 64. He took his secrets with him. Today, Coral Castle stands just as he left it, a sprawling, silent question mark in the Florida sun. It's a historic place, a tourist attraction, a monument to a love that might not have even been real, in one of the greatest engineering mysteries of our time. So who was this guy? A heartbroken romantic, a reclusive genius, a master of some forgotten science? Maybe he was all of those things. He told us he knew the secrets of the pyramids, and then he went and built his own version of one, not in Egypt, but in Florida. He left behind a legacy of questions carved into 1,100 tons of stone. And in doing that, he made sure his story and his castle would become immortal. Thanks for going down this rabbit hole with me into the mystery of Coral Castle. If you think this story is as wild as I do, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. And if you're ever in South Florida, the castle is open. Maybe you'll be the one to finally figure it out. Until next time, keep questioning.
The unfinished obelisk, lying like a fallen giant in the ancient granite quarries of Aswan. Picture this, a colossal slab of pink granite over 137 feet long. That's taller than the 10-story building and weighing a staggering 1,200 tons. That's heavier than 2 Boeing 747 airplanes combined. Commissioned around 1500 BCE by Queen Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's most powerful female pharaohs, this obelisk was meant to be the crowning glory of her temple, a symbol of divine power reaching toward the sun god Ra. But here's the shocking twist: it was never finished. As workers pounded away with diorite stones, hard balls of rock used like primitive hammers, a massive crack appeared along its length, forcing them to abandon the project mid-quarry. Today, it lies exactly where it was left, still attached to the bedrock, as if frozen in time. But how did ancient Egyptians even attempt something this insane? Mainstream archaeology tells us they used simple tools, copper chisels, wooden wedges soaked in water to expand and split the stone, and sheer manpower from thousands of laborers. They'd carve trenches around the obelisk, then undercut it to free it from the quarry floor. To move it, ramps, sledges, and perhaps even wetting the sand to reduce friction. Ingenious, but feasible with Bronze Age tech. Yet, here's where it gets controversial. Some researchers argue this obelisk hints at a much older pre-flood civilization. Why? The precision of the quarrying marks suggests techniques beyond pounding stones. Imagine if this wasn't Hatshepsut's project at all, but a relic from a lost era, perhaps 12,000 years ago, before a massive flood, tied to the end of the Ice Age, swept away an advanced society. Theories like those from Graham Hancock point to global megalithic sites, from Göbekli Tepe in Turkey to Baalbek in Lebanon, all showing similar impossible engineering. Could the unfinished obelisk be evidence of sonic levitation or laser-like cutting tools from a forgotten Atlantis? The crack that doomed it, was it just bad luck or the remnant of a cataclysmic earthquake during the flood itself? Mind-blowing, right? If completed, this obelisk would have been the largest ever erected, dwarfing even the ones in Luxor. But abandoned, it serves as a tantalizing clue. What secrets died with that crack? Now, shift gears to the Serapeum of Saqqara, an underground labyrinth that feels straight out of a sci-fi thriller. Buried beneath the sands near Memphis, this vast network of tunnels was discovered in 1850 by French archaeologist Augustin Mariette, who stumbled upon it while hunting for ancient manuscripts. What he found? 26 enormous granite sarcophagi, each carved from a single block of Aswan granite, the same quarry as our obelisk, and weighing between 60 and 100 tons. That's like stacking 20 elephants in a box. These coffins are massive, 13 feet long, 7 feet wide, and 11 feet tall, with lids alone tipping the scales at 30 tons. Officially, they were tombs for sacred Apis bulls, embodiments of the god Ptah, mummified and buried with royal honors from around 1400 BCE onward. The bulls were chosen for their black and white markings, paraded as living gods, and when they died, embalmed in these opulent stone boxes. The tunnels stretch over 1,000 feet, dimly lit and eerie, with niches perfectly fitted for these behemoths. But hold on, this is where the plot thickens into pure mystery. How did ancient workers transport these sarcophagi through narrow, twisting passages, barely wider than the boxes themselves? The turns are 90 degrees, with no room for error. Ramps, levers, it's a logistical nightmare. And the precision. The interiors are polished to a mirror finish, flat to within 0.001 inches. That's finer than modern machining tolerances. Bronze tools couldn't achieve this. They dull too quickly on hard granite. Enter the alternative theories. What if these weren't bull tombs at all? Some experts propose they were high-tech devices from a pre-flood era. Imagine them as ancient batteries or arc-like energy containers, harnessing piezoelectric properties of quartz and granite for power. Or, as one theory suggests, harmonic resonance chambers for healing or levitation. Sound waves vibrating at specific frequencies to move stones or regenerate cells. Eyewitness accounts from explorers describe strange hums in the tunnels, and modern tests show acoustic anomalies. Could this be lost technology from a civilization that thrived before the Great Flood, perhaps the same one that built the pyramids? Carbon dating ties them to dynastic Egypt, but inscriptions are sparse, and only one sarcophagus contained bull remains. The rest were empty or filled with rubble. Shocking, isn't it? If not for bulls, then for what? Alien artifacts? Forbidden knowledge sealed away after a global catastrophe? Connecting these dots, the Great Flood looms large. Around 10,000 BCE, as ice sheets melted rapidly, sea levels rose 400 feet, submerging coastlines and possibly advanced societies. Flood myths appear in over 500 cultures worldwide, from Noah's Ark to the Epic of Gilgamesh. Sites like the unfinished Obelisk and Serapeum might be survivors or reboots of that lost world. Mainstream science dismisses this as pseudoscience, insisting on human labor and known tools, but the anomalies persist. Unexplained vitrification on stones, alignments with ancient solstices, and global parallels to other megaliths. What if Egypt's pharaohs inherited these techniques from flood survivors, repurposing them for their own glory? In the end, these structures aren't just stones. They're invitations to rethink our past. Did a pre-flood super-civilization master forces we can only dream of, only to be erased by nature's fury? Or were the ancient Egyptians simply geniuses ahead of their time? The evidence is out there, buried in the sand, waiting for us to uncover the truth. If this blew your mind, hit that like button, subscribe for more ancient enigmas, and drop in the comments, do you think these were built before the flood? Let's keep the conversation going. History might just be rewriting itself.
Imagine a forgotten chapter of human history buried beneath the sands of Egypt, where colossal stones whisper secrets of a world lost to a devastating flood. We're talking about the Great Flood again, that cataclysmic event echoed in myths from Noah to Gilgamesh, a global deluge around 12,000 years ago that may have erased advanced civilizations. Nestled in the sacred city of Abydos, one of Egypt's oldest religious centers, the Osirian lurks behind the grand temple of Seti I, like a hidden basement full of forbidden knowledge. Abydos was a pilgrimage site dedicated to Osiris, the god of resurrection and the afterlife, where pharaohs built shrines for millennia. Discovered in 1902 by archaeologists Flinders Petrie and Margaret Murray, the Osirian was unearthed during excavations that revealed a structure unlike anything else in Egypt. Picture this, a massive subterranean chamber, 100 feet long and 65 feet wide, built with enormous red granite blocks, some weighing up to 200 tons. That's heavier than a blue whale. These monoliths were quarried over 200 miles away in Aswan and transported. How? Mainstream experts say by river barges and ramps, but the precision is staggering. The blocks fit together without mortar, so tightly you couldn't slide a razor blade between them. At the center, a raised island platform surrounded by a deep moat filled with water, flanked by 10 gigantic pillars supporting what was once a roof of equally massive beams. 2 staircases descend into the water, leading nowhere apparent. And here's the eerie part. The whole thing is stark, undecorated, no hieroglyphics, no carvings on the main stones, just raw, imposing power. It's like the builder said, let the scale speak for itself. Officially, Egyptologists date the Osirian to around 1300 BCE, during the reign of Seti I, the same pharaoh who built the ornate temple in front. They see it as his cenotaph, a symbolic tomb where Seti could identify with Osiris, the dismembered god reborn. Inscriptions nearby, like cartouches bearing Seti's name, Menamatre is beneficial to Osiris, support this. The water channel?
a ritual nod to the primeval waters of creation or the Nile's life-giving floods, perhaps used in ceremonies where priests reenacted Osiris's resurrection. Dorothy 80, the reincarnated priestess known as Seti, claimed the waters cured her ailments. Flower of life symbols, sacred geometry patterns, appear on pillars, possibly added later but evoking advanced knowledge. How did primitive builders achieve such precision? Theories whisper of lost technologies, sonic levitation, geopolymer casting, or even extraterrestrial aid. Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval link it to a pre-flood Hall of Records aligned with stars like Deneb in 10,500 BCE. If true, the Osirian isn't Seti's creation. It's a reboot, inherited from flood survivors who mastered forces we can't replicate today. Tying it back to the Great Flood, myths worldwide describe a deluge resetting civilization around 10,000 BCE. The Osirian's design mimics Osiris's myth, dismembered body parts scattered, then resurrected, perhaps symbolizing humanity's rebirth post-cataclysm. Empty chambers once held sacred relics. Only one sarcophagus room has bas-reliefs from the Book of the Dead, but the rest, barren, like a vault for forbidden pre-flood wisdom. Mainstream skeptics dismiss this as pseudoscience, citing no direct evidence beyond Seti's marks, but the anomalies scream for reevaluation. Was it a residence chamber for energy, a portal to the afterlife, or proof of Atlantis' influence? In the shadows of Abydos, the Osirian stands as a bridge to our drowned past. Did a super-civilization thrive before the flood, only for Egyptians to inherit their echoes? Or is it just masterful pharaonic engineering? The stones know, but they're not telling, yet. If this left you stunned, smash that like button, subscribe for more ancient mysteries, and comment below. Could the Osirian be pre-flood?
The megalithic temples of Malta, nestled in the heart of the Mediterranean, stand as enduring testaments to prehistoric ingenuity, offering a window into a society that thrived on these small islands millennia before the rise of classical civilizations. Constructed between roughly 3600 BC and 2500 BC, these structures predate many of the world's most famous ancient monuments, including the pyramids of Giza and Stonehenge, and were once hailed as the oldest freestanding buildings on Earth until the unearthing of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey shifted that timeline. Built by Neolithic settlers who likely migrated from Sicily around 5900 BC, the temples reflect a process of local cultural evolution, marked by advancements in architecture, art, and possibly astronomy, all achieved without metal tools or the wheel. Their sudden disappearance after 2500 BC, coinciding with the end of the Tarxien phase, remains one of archaeology's puzzles, potentially linked to environmental changes, overpopulation, or external influences. The history of these temples unfolds across several prehistoric phases, beginning with the early Neolithic, 5200 to 4100 BC, encompassing subphases like Gar-Dalam, 5900 to 4500 BC, Grey Scorba, 4500 to 4400 BC, and Red Scorba, 4400 to 4100 BC, where evidence of farming, pottery, and early shrines appears. The temple period proper, 4100 to 2500 BC, includes the Zebouj, 4100 to 3800 BC, and Mjar, 3800 to 3600 BC, transitioning from rock-cut tombs to standing structures, followed by the Gigantia phase, 3600 to 3000 BC, Saflieni transitional phase, 3300 to 3000 BC, and the culminating Tarxien phase, 3000 to 2500 BC. Later Bronze Age phases, such as Tarxien Cemetery 2500 to 1500 BC, saw temples repurposed for burials, indicating cultural shifts. Archaeological excavations, starting in the 19th century with figures like Sir Temi Zamit, have revealed a wealth of details. Radiocarbon dating in the mid-20th century confirmed the temple's Neolithic origins, refuting earlier links to Aegean cultures.
The sites were inscribed as UNESCO World Heritage in 1980, initially Gigantia, and expanded in 1992 to include 5 more, recognized for their monumental scale and technical sophistication under limited resources. Builders quarried local limestone, transporting massive blocks, some weighing tons, via stone spheres as rollers, a method inferred from artifacts at Tarxien and Hatchikim. Walls were filled with rubble between inner and outer faces, and apses may have been roofed, though evidence is inconclusive. Decorations included bas-reliefs of spirals, plants, and animals, drilled holes for symbolic purposes, and altars for offerings. Astronomical alignments, such as at Monidra, where sunlight hits specific points during equinoxes, suggest sophisticated knowledge of celestial events. Excavations have yielded pottery with incised designs, tools like sickle blades, and bones from domesticated animals, cattle, sheep, and goats, and hunted species, indicating a mixed farming-hunting economy. Figurines, often depicting voluptuous females, point to fertility cults, while animal bones on altars suggest sacrificial rituals. Red ochre was used in burials and decorations, symbolizing blood or life. These elements portray a highly organized society with spiritual practices centered on renewal and abundance. The temple scale raises questions about labor organization on small islands. Mainstream archaeology views them as products of isolated evolution, but alternative theories propose connections to advanced ancient civilizations. Some link Malta to Plato's Atlantis, citing submerged structures and temple alignments as echoes of a lost empire destroyed by cataclysm around 9600 BC. Pre-flood hypotheses popularized in documentaries and books suggest survivors of a global deluge tied to Ice Age melt rebuilt here, with elongated skulls from the hypogeum hinting at distinct populations. Critics, including local archaeologists, counter that radiocarbon dates firmly place them in the Neolithic, dismissing claims of 12,000-year-old origins as unsubstantiated. Folklore of giants building the temples, as at Gigantia, adds mythic layers.
Imagine the whispers of a drowned world rising from the mists of time, where colossal stones stand sentinel against the fury of an ancient cataclysm. We're diving back into the shadows of prehistory, exploring structures that may predate the Great Flood, that biblical deluge echoed in myths from Noah to the Epic of Gilgamesh, a global wipeout around 12,000 years ago that buried advanced societies under waves of chaos. But what if echoes of those lost worlds endure in the windswept fields of France? Today, we uncover the megalithic Carnac stones in Brittany, a sprawling enigma of over 3,000 granite giants that defy explanation. These aren't mere rocks, they're a labyrinth of mystery, potentially built by flood survivors wielding forgotten knowledge. Prepare for jaw-dropping facts and theories that will shatter your view of human history. Nestled along the rugged coast of Brittany, near the village of Carnac, this UNESCO World Heritage Site sprawls across 4 kilometers like a frozen army of stone warriors. Picture rows upon rows of menhirs, standing stones, meticulously aligned in parallel lines, some converging like ancient arrows pointing to secrets long buried. The main groups? Limenek, with 1,099 stones in 11 rows stretching 1,165 meters. Kermario, boasting 1,029 in 10 rows over 1,300 meters. And Kurliskan, with 555 in 13 rows spanning 800 meters. Stones range from knee-high at 0.5 meters to towering over 6 meters, averaging 5 to 10 tons each. That's like hoisting a small elephant upright. And don't forget the dolmens, those eerie stone tombs with massive capstones, or tumuli like the Saint Michel Mound, a 35,000 cubic meter behemoth hiding burial chambers. The Manio Giant, a solitary 6.5 meter monolith etched with serpentine carvings that slither like ancient warnings. Discovered piecemeal since the 18th century, with serious digs kicking off in the 1870s by Scottish archaeologist James Milne, the site now draws pilgrims seeking answers in its silent ranks. Mainstream archaeology dates these marvels to the Neolithic era, around 4,500 to 3,300 BCE, predating Stonehenge by a millennium,
and the pyramids by 2. Recent 2025 studies push some sections back to 4600 to 4300 BCE, crowning them Europe's oldest megalithic monuments. Built by prehistoric locals, farmers or hunter-gatherers, these folks quarried local granite without metal tools, likely dragging slabs on log rollers, levering them into pits with ramps, and stabilizing with earth. Why? Theories abound. Ceremonial hubs for fertility rites, with animal bones and pottery hinting at rituals, astronomical observatories, alignments tracking solstices and lunar cycles. Alexander Thom's work suggests they predicted eclipses with precision unmatched for millennia. Or social markers, dolmens as elite tombs stuffed with jade axes from the Italian Alps, flaunting trade networks and hierarchies. Tumuli like Tumiak held treasures, polished axes, beads from Iberia, proof of a connected, hierarchical society. Yet the sites managed today with fences and sheep grazers to combat erosion after vandals toppled 39 stones in 2023 for a DIY store. Shocking? Absolutely. These stones have survived millennia, only to face modern bulldozers. But here's where it gets electrifying. The alignments descend in height, meandering like serpents toward the sea. Why this pattern? And anomalies pile up. The acidic soil dissolved bones, leaving empty tombs. Stones repurposed for roads, scrambling original layouts. Most mind-bending? Alignments plunge underwater. Off Karnak's coast, divers found submerged menhirs and axes from Italian mines dating to 4500 BCE. Sea levels rose 400 feet post-Ice Age, submerging parts built when the shore was miles away. A 20-foot underwater menhir, erected at least 7,500 years ago. This screams pre-flood origins, tying into global deluges that reset civilization. Enter the controversy. Alternative theorists like Graham Hancock argue these aren't primitive feats, but remnants of a lost super-civilization. Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse posits an Ice Age society, advanced in astronomy and geophysics, obliterated by cometary impacts and floods around 10,000 BCE. Karnak, a survivor, perhaps built by Atlantean descendants. Plato's Sunken Empire, echoed in Breton legends of drowned cities like Is. Ulf Erlingsson links Plato's Atlantis to this megalithic zone, spanning Europe to North Africa. Pierre Mérot suggests alignments trace earthquake faults, an earthquake detector from seismic-savvy Atlanteans. Sonic levitation, psychic stone moving, serpentine carvings evoke energy lines, telluric currents harnessed for unknown powers. And those solar illuminations in dolmens? Echoes of Egyptian tech, but older. Did Atlanteans inspire pyramids? Global parallels, Stonehenge, Göbekli Tepe, even Easter Island statues, all fingerprints of a shared pre-flood knowledge base. Tying it to the Great Flood, myths worldwide describe a watery apocalypse, melting ice sheets, flooding coasts. Karnak's submerged rose? Direct evidence. Built on dry land, then drowned as seas rose. Survivors, fleeing Atlantis's quakes and tsunamis, resettled in Brittany, erecting these as memorials, observatories, or barriers against the sea's wrath. Legends of giants or Merlin petrifying armies, veiled memories of godlike builders. Mainstream dismisses as pseudoscience, citing no direct proof beyond Neolithic tools. But anomalies, like precession accounting alignments, hint at math beyond primitive folk. In Karnak's windswept fields, stones whisper of a forgotten epoch. Were they beacons for a pre-flood utopia, guardians of lost wisdom, or Neolithic genius alone? The flood's shadow looms. Submerged secrets await.
The Dolmen de Soto in Spain and the Newgrange tomb in Ireland. These aren't just tombs. They're portals to a mysterious past, potentially crafted by flood survivors wielding knowledge beyond our comprehension. Get ready for astonishing facts, eerie alignments, and theories that will leave you spellbound. Let's begin in the sun-baked fields of Andalusia, Spain, with the Dolmen de Soto, a subterranean enigma buried under a massive mound in Trigueros, Huelva. Discovered in 1922 by landowner Armando de Soto Morillas while prepping to build a house, this beast was excavated in the 1920s by German archaeologist Hugo Obermeier, revealing a structure that screams ancient ingenuity. Picture a circular mound 75 meters across, like a football field, housing a V-shaped passage 20.9 meters long, starting narrow and 0.8 meters wide and 1.55 meters high in the west, ballooning to 3.1 meters wide and 3.9 meters high in the east, leading to a cozy chamber. Built with 64 towering orthostats of quartzite, sandstone, and limestone, plus 20 capstones roofing it all, this is one of Spain's largest dolmens. And the weight? Some stones tip the scales at over 20 tons. How did Neolithic folks haul them without wheels or metal? Mainstream archaeology dates it to 3000–2500 BCE, a Neolithic ritual burial site for the elite or community. Excavations uncovered 8 bodies in fetal positions, huddled with daggers, cups, and marine fossils, sparse grave goods suggesting it wasn't heavily used. But here's the shocker. 43 stones bear engravings of human figures, cups, knives, and geometric swirls, some reused from older menhirs, hinting at a deeper history. During equinoxes, sunlight floods the passage, illuminating the chamber in a rebirth ritual, much like a cosmic clock. Theories swirl. Was it a solar calendar, a healing sanctuary, or a gateway to the afterlife? Alternative voices whisper of pre-flood origins, perhaps 6,000 years old or more, linking it to a lost civilization that mastered astronomy before the deluge buried their world. Imagine flood refugees repurposing sacred menhirs and coding survival knowledge in stone. The engraving's age and the site's east-west orientation, clues to antediluvian tech defying simple tools. Now, cross the seas to Ireland's lush Boyne Valley, where Newgrange stands as a 5,000-year-old masterpiece, older than Stonehenge or the pyramids. Built around 3200 BCE, this passage tomb was unearthed in 1699 when landowner Charles Campbell's workers stumbled into its entrance, but true excavation came in 1962 to 1975 under Professor Michael J. O'Kelly, who restored its gleaming facade. Envision a mound 85 meters wide, 12 meters high, weighing 200,000 tons, encircled by 97 curbstones and a later Bronze Age stone circle of 12 survivors. A 19-meter passage snakes to a cruciform chamber with a corbelled roof, no mortar needed, just precision stacking. The art? Mind-blowing. Spirals, lozenges, chevrons, and a triskel on the entrance stone, some carvings hidden below ground, etched with stone tools for symbolic power. But the ultimate jaw-dropper. On winter solstice, sunlight pierces a roof box, lighting the chamber for 17 minutes. A beam of hope on the darkest day, first witnessed by O'Kelly in 1967. Myths abound. It's Shidden Broga, home to gods like the Dagda and Angus, a portal to the otherworld where time bends. Purpose? A house of the dead for rituals, an astronomical observatory tracking solstices, or a calendar for farming folk. Controversies rage. O'Kelly's quartz facade reconstruction is called Disney-like by critics, though evidence supports it. Alternative theories? Graham Hancock and others see Newgrange as a relic of Ice Age survivors, an advanced pre-flood society that aligns stones with stars, perhaps from Atlantis. DNA hints at elite inbreeding, but recent studies debunk royal incest myths. Both sites share passage designs and solar magic, Dolmen's equinox glow, Newgrange's solstice beam, echoing global megaliths like Malta's temples or Karnak's rose. Could they stem from a unified pre-diluvian culture, scattered by floods? Rising seas submerged coasts, erasing evidence, but these endure as beacons. Tying to the Great Flood, as ice melted, waters rose 400 feet, drowning lands. Myths of drowned realms like Atlantis or Irish legends of flooded plains suggest survivors rebuilt, infusing stones with cosmic wisdom. Mainstream says Neolithic genius with ramps and levers. Alternative scream lost tech, sonic lifting, geopolymers. Empty chambers? Not for bodies, but energy or records. These megaliths challenge our timeline. Were they flood-proof vaults of ancient lore, or human triumphs? The stones hold secrets, perhaps waiting for solstice light to reveal all.
Now we venture to the high Andean plateau of Peru, to the megalithic Siustani Chulpas, towering tombs that some believe predate the Tinca and even the flood itself.
Perched near the mystical lake Titicaca, these cylindrical giants challenge our understanding of history, hinting at lost technologies and cosmic connections. Prepare for mind-bending revelations that could rewrite humanity's past. Nestled on a rugged peninsula overlooking Lake Umayo, just 34 kilometers northwest of Puno in southern Peru, Siustani emerges like a sentinel from the windswept Altiplano at 3,840 meters above sea level. This pre-Incan cemetery, surrounded by the shimmering waters that locals call a sea in the sky, was first documented by Spanish chroniclers in the 16th century, but systematic exploration began in the 19th century, with adventurers like Ephraim George Squire, who sketched the towers in 1877. Modern excavations, led by figures like Peruvian archaeologist Alfredo Valencia Zagara in the 1970s, revealed a site teeming with history. Picture over 90 chulpas, tower-like structures up to 12 meters tall, crafted from massive andesite and basalt blocks weighing tons each. These cylinders taper slightly outward from base to top, with curved domes and intricate friezes, some featuring carved lizards symbolizing regeneration and rebirth. The entrances? Tiny openings, just 70 centimeters square, always facing east toward the rising sun, a nod to Andean beliefs in solar resurrection. Inside, the dry, high-altitude air preserved mummies in fetal positions, bundled with artifacts like pottery, jewelry, and tools, suggesting these were elite burials for nobility and their kin. Mainstream archaeology attributes the chulpas to the Kola, or Kolia people, an Aymara-speaking group who dominated the region from around 1200 to 1450 AD, before their conquest by the Inca Empire under Pachacuti. The site reflects a blend of influences: earlier roots in the Tiwanaku culture, 500 to 950 AD, which spread from nearby Bolivia, and later Inca modifications using precise polygonal masonry. Radiocarbon dating from human remains and artifacts places the primary construction in the late intermediate period, 1000 to 1450 AD, with the chulpas serving as houses of the soul, or uta amaya, where extended families were interred to honor ancestors and ensure their journey to the afterlife. The Kola, known for their warrior ethos and resistance to Inca expansion, built these as status symbols. The taller and finer the tower, the higher the social rank. Construction techniques? Labor-intensive. Stones quarried from distant sites like Capachaca, 20 kilometers away, hauled on llama trains or reed boats across the lake, then fitted without mortar using ramps and levers, as evidenced by an unfinished chulpa with a visible ramp. Spanish chronicler Bernabe Cobo marveled at similar methods during Cuzco's cathedral build in the 1600s. Grave robbers dynamited many towers in the 19th and 20th centuries, scattering bones and treasures, but restorations by Peru's National Institute of Culture have preserved the site's eerie beauty. But here's where the narrative cracks open into pure enigma. The precision of the stonework rivals that of Sacsayhuamán or Machu Picchu, with blocks interlocking so tightly that not even a knife blade slips between them. Some chulpas feature a dual-layer design, outer basalt shells encasing inner andesite cores sealed with white clay. Why this complexity for mere tombs? And the materials? Basalt and andesite, volcanic rocks from quarries over 20 kilometers away, transported across treacherous terrain without wheels. Shocking fact: one chulpa's western side shows explosive damage as if from an internal force, not just looters. Blocks hurled 50 meters away. Excavations revealed no widespread mummification intent. The preservation was natural, raising questions about their true purpose. Unfinished towers expose scoop marks and protrusions, eerily similar to those at Egypt's unfinished obelisk or Peru's Ollantaytambo, hinting at advanced quarrying lost to time. Enter the alternative theories that will blow your mind. What if these weren't originally tombs, but part of an ancient energy network? Researchers like Christopher Dunn and geologist Dr. Robert Schoch proposed the finer chulpas harnessed acoustic resonance. Tests inside one amplified notes A and A sharp, echoing the Great Pyramid's King's Chamber. Energy dowsers detected energy bands, suggesting piezoelectric properties from the quartz-rich stones, perhaps generating power or healing vibrations. The east-facing doors? Portals for solar energy alignment, not just symbolism. Dating pushes boundaries. Some argue the superior masonry predates the Kola, linking to enigmatic perhuas or Viracochans, mythical white-skinned beings who, per Inca lore, emerged from Lake Titicaca post-flood to civilize humanity.
Viracocha, the creator god, unleashed the Unu Pachacuti, a great flood, to punish a sinful world, sparing only 2 survivors at Titicaca to repopulate. Legends describe a fertile valley flooded to form the lake, mirroring global deluge myths. Could Siustani's chulpas be pre-flood relics repurposed as tombs by later cultures? Proximity to Titicaca, cradle of Inca creation, where Viracocha forged the sun and stars, fuels speculation of Atlantean or extraterrestrial influence, Graham Hancock-style lost civilizations surviving cataclysm. The lizard carvings? Symbols of transformation, perhaps encoding knowledge from a drowned epoch. Global parallels abound, like Malta's temples or Karnak's alignments. These towers might map ley lines or cosmic energies, built by flood refugees wielding sonic levitation or geopalmer tech. Tying it all to the Great Flood, as ice sheets melted, seas rose 400 feet, inundating coasts and possibly advanced Andean societies. Inca myths of Viracocha's deluge suggest Siustani as a post-flood sanctuary, its towers beacons for rebirth. Mainstream skeptics insist on cultural evolution with known tools, but anomalies, like non-local stones and resonant chambers, scream for re-evaluation. Were the chulpas energy devices from a pre-flood utopia, later co-opted for burials, or masterful Kola engineering alone? In the shadow of Lake Titicaca, Siustani's chulpas whisper of drowned secrets. Did a super-civilization thrive before the flood, only for survivors to etch their legacy in stone? The evidence tantalizes. History may be deeper than we know.
Turkey's enigmatic megalithic Derinkuyu and Kaymakli underground cities in Cappadocia, sprawling subterranean metropolises that some believe predate recorded history, potentially built as pre-flood bunkers by a lost civilization. These aren't mere caves, they're engineering marvels, self-sustaining worlds that could shelter thousands, challenging everything we know about ancient humanity. Brace for shocking discoveries that might prove our ancestors were far more advanced than we thought. Picture this. In 1963, a Turkish homeowner in Nevşehir knocks down a basement wall during renovations, only to stumble into a mysterious tunnel. What unfolds is Derinkuyu, the deepest and largest excavated underground city on Earth, plunging 85 meters, nearly 280 feet, into soft volcanic tough rock. This colossal complex sprawls across 445 square kilometers, with up to 18 levels connected by a maze of narrow, stoop-inducing passages designed for defense. Imagine descending into a hidden realm, stables on the upper floors for livestock, communal kitchens blackened by ancient fires, wineries with massive presses for oil and grape juice, storage rooms stocked for sieges, tombs, schools, and even a cruciform church on the lowest level. Ventilation? Over 50 shafts, some reports say hundreds, ingeniously circulate fresh air to the deepest chambers, preventing suffocation for up to 20,000 residents plus animals. Wells tap underground rivers 55 meters deep, providing water immune to surface poisoning. And the defenses? Half-ton rolling stone doors, maneuverable by one person from inside, seal off sections like impenetrable vaults, with peepholes for spearing invaders. Shocking fact? These boulders weigh 1,000 pounds each, balanced so precisely that modern engineers marvel at the physics. The city's layout includes escape routes, hidden entrances, over 600 scattered across homes, and the ability to isolate levels, cutting off water to trapped enemies above. Mainstream archaeology dates Derinkuyu to the Hittites around 1600 to 1200 BCE, who may have begun carving it as a refuge from invaders. The Phrygians expanded it in the 8th to 7th centuries BCE, but it truly flourished under Byzantine Christians from the 1st century AD, who fortified it against Arab raids, Persian armies, and later Mongol hordes led by Timur in the 14th century. Greek-speaking locals used it as a sanctuary during Ottoman persecutions, hiding for months with self-sustaining systems. It was a troglodyte paradise. Families lived in apartments, children attended underground schools, and communities held rituals in chapels adorned with crosses. But by 1923, after the Greco-Turkish War, Cappadocian Greeks were expelled to Greece, abandoning the city for good. Forgotten until its rediscovery, it was opened to visitors in 1969 and declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985 as part of Göreme National Park.
Yet only half is excavated. Sealed sections hint at untold depths, with local legends of tunnels leading to hidden relics or even the underworld. Now venture 9 kilometers away to Göbekli, the widest underground city, often called Derinkuyi's twin. Discovered similarly through surface homes, it dives across 8 levels, though only 4 are open, carved into the same malleable tuff. While shallower than Derinkuyi, it's broader, with spacious tunnels that feel less claustrophobic. Features mirror its neighbor: stables repurposed from early food storage caves, communal kitchens, a church, graveyards, and vast storage for grains and wine, suggesting economic prosperity. Tiny entrances, just wide enough for one person, lead to labyrinths where defenders could ambush foes. Capacity? Likely thousands, connected to Derinkuyi by a 5 to 9 kilometer tunnel, a staggering feat that forms part of a network of over 200 underground sites in Cappadocia. Mainstream views dated to the Phrygians in the 8th to 7th centuries BCE, expanded by early Christians during the Arab-Byzantine Wars 780 to 1180 AD for religious refuge. Open to the public in 1964, it's also UNESCO protected, offering glimpses into a fortified, self-reliant world where inhabitants could endure sieges indefinitely. But here's the mind-blowing twist. These cities' precision defies simple tools. How did primitive builders excavate millions of tons of rock without collapse, engineer flawless ventilation, or transport massive stones underground? Alternative theories explode the timeline. Some link them to the Younger Dryas event, around 14,500 years ago, a mini ice age with cometary impacts and massive floods, proposing Derinkuyi and Göbekli as pre-flood bunkers by a lost super-civilization. Graham Hancock and others speculate survivors of Atlantis or an advanced Ice Age society fled cataclysms here, using forgotten tech like resonant frequencies to soften rock for carving, echoing modern theories of acoustic levitation. Connections to Göbekli Tepe, 600 kilometers east and dated to 12,000 years ago, suggest a shared knowledge base. Extraterrestrial whispers abound. Were these shelters from alien invasions or cosmic disasters? Geological studies confirm the tuff's ease of excavation, but the scale implies organized labor from a society far older than Hittites. Unexplained damage, like explosive blasts on walls, fuels ideas of ancient energy weapons or seismic events tied to the flood. And that network? Perhaps a global underground grid for preserving humanity during the deluge. Tying it to the Great Flood, as seas rose 400 feet, submerging coasts, myths worldwide describe watery apocalypses. In Cappadocia, legends of drowned valleys mirror this, Viracocha-like creators emerging post-flood. Derinkuyi and Göbekli might be flood-proof arcs repurposed by later cultures. Mainstream insists on gradual evolution from Hittite hideouts, but anomalies like pre-Byzantine carvings and unexcavated depths demand reevaluation. Were they energy resonators harnessing Earth's frequencies for survival, or masterful defenses against nature's fury? In Cappadocia's ethereal landscapes, these underground enigmas beckon us to question our origins. Did pre-flood geniuses carve them as lifelines, only for echoes to survive? The stones hold the truth, buried deep.
What if I told you that hidden in the mountains of Japan are massive stone structures so ancient that their origins predate recorded history? What if these mysterious monuments were created by a sophisticated civilization that existed thousands of years before the Great Flood myths found in cultures across our planet? Let's start our journey in the city of Takasago, Hyogo Prefecture, where the Ishi-no-Hoden megalith sits as one of Japan's most bewildering monuments. Imagine a gigantic stone structure in the shape of an old tube television, nearly 6 meters high and weighing approximately 500 tons, that appears to float miraculously above a pond of water. This isn't special effects magic, this is real, and it's been sitting there for millennia. The name Ishi-no-Hoden literally translates to stone treasure hall, but this doesn't begin to capture the true mystery of this colossal structure. Carved from hyaloclastite, a type of hydrated stone rich in black volcanic glass formed during underwater volcanic eruptions 70 million years ago, this megalith represents an engineering marvel that seems impossible for its supposed time of creation.
What's truly astonishing is that this massive stone appears to float above the water due to its precision-cut base designed to create this optical illusion, or perhaps something more technological. The water beneath it never dries up, even during severe droughts, suggesting the ancient builders might have tapped into underground water systems or created advanced hydrological features. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Local legends claim that this stone is connected to divine beings who descended from the heavens in a giant rock ship to help humanity during a great epidemic. According to these tales, the gods Okuni Nushi and Sukuna Bikona appeared to Emperor Sujin in a dream during a devastating plague and promised protection if they were worshipped. When the emperor complied, the epidemic miraculously stopped. This story takes on eerie relevance today as the site has attracted increased visitors during recent global health crises, with pilgrims seeking protection from illness at this ancient monument. Now, let's travel to the village of Asuka in the Nara prefecture, where another massive megalith defies explanation. Meet the Masuda-no-Iwafune, or the rock ship of Masuda. This behemoth is carved from a single piece of granite weighing an estimated 800 tons. That's nearly 300 tons heavier than Ishi-no-Hoden. Its dimensions are staggering, approximately 11 meters in length, 8 meters in width, and 4.7 meters in height. The top has been completely flattened with two perfect 1-meter square holes carved into it and a ridgeline that runs parallel to both holes. The base features lattice-shaped indentations that archaeologists believe might be related to the method used to flatten the sides of the rock, though no one knows for sure. The name Iwafune literally translates to stone ship, and local legends indeed speak of a heavenly rock vessel that carried deities from the skies to Japan. Some researchers have noted that the ridgeline across the top of the monument aligns with the sunset on a specific day significant in the lunar calendar, possibly marking the beginning of the agricultural season. This has led to theories that it might have been an astronomical observation point, though most mainstream scholars dismiss this idea. Here's where the plot thickens. Both these mysterious structures share similarities with each other and with megalithic sites across the world, suggesting a possible global prehistoric civilization with advanced technological knowledge. The precise angles, smooth surfaces, and massive scale of these stones resemble the craftsmanship found in ancient Egyptian and South American sites, cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. Even more intriguingly, some researchers have pointed out stylistic similarities between these Japanese megaliths and sites in Peru, such as the angular blocks at Pumapunku and the Rumi Hawassi stone of Apurimac. This raises the compelling possibility of transoceanic contact thousands of years before conventional history tells us such travel was possible. But what really pushes the boundaries of conventional understanding is the potential age of these structures. While mainstream archaeology suggests they might date back to the Kofun period 250 to 552 AD, several compelling pieces of evidence suggest they could be far older. Some researchers propose that Ishi-no-Hoden could be as old as 16,000 years, dating it to a time before the catastrophic flooding that occurred at the end of the last ice age. This would place its construction firmly in the pre-flood era, when ancient myths from cultures worldwide speak of advanced civilizations that were lost to rising waters. The Jomon period of Japanese history, which spanned from about 14,000 BC to 300 BC, shows evidence of sophisticated pottery and cultural development. But could they have created these massive stone structures? The precision cutting and moving of 500 to 800-ton stones would be a challenge even with modern technology, making these achievements seemingly impossible for prehistoric hunter-gatherers. This has led to various theories about lost technologies or even assistance from advanced extraterrestrial visitors, as suggested by ancient astronaut theorists. Consider this. Both megaliths show minimal tool marks despite their precise construction. In the case of Ishi-no-Hoden, studies conducted in 2005 to 2006 by the University of Otemai and local authorities using three-dimensional laser measurements found no traces of picks or other tools on its surface. The entire rock appears polished of any sign of processing, as if the builders used techniques that somehow manipulated the stone at a molecular level or employed technologies we simply don't understand today. The mysteries deepen when we examine the cultural context. Both megaliths were later incorporated into religious sites. Ishi-no-Hoden became part of a Shinto shrine, while Buddhist temples surrounded Masuda-no-Iwafune, but their original purpose remains unknown. The later cultures that adopted these sites seem to have no knowledge of who built them or why, suggesting they were already ancient mysteries thousands of years ago. So what were these massive structures actually used for? Theories abound among researchers and alternative historians. Some propose that they were energy generators that interacted with underground water systems and geological forces. Others suggest they were representations of divine vehicles or landing sites for celestial beings. The more conventional explanations, that they were failed tomb constructions or astronomical markers, don't fully account for their sophisticated design or the incredible effort required to create them. The Great Flood myths found in numerous cultures, including the Japanese legend of the heavenly rock ship, may hold the key to understanding why we know so little about these structures' origins. If a catastrophic global event did occur around 12,000 years ago, as many geologists now believe, it would have wiped out advanced prehistoric civilizations, leaving only their most durable creations behind as mysterious monuments that later cultures could only incorporate into their own belief systems as divine artifacts. As we conclude our exploration of Japan's mysterious megaliths, we're left with more questions than answers. How were these massive stones quarried, shaped, and moved without modern technology? Why do they share similarities with sites on other continents? What advanced knowledge did their builders possess about astronomy, geology, and energy systems? And most intriguingly, could these be the surviving remnants of a sophisticated pre-flood civilization whose achievements were largely lost to history? The Ishi-no-Hoden and Masuda-no-Iwafune stand as silent witnesses to a forgotten chapter in human history, challenging our conventional timelines and urging us to reconsider what we think we know about our ancient past.
What if I told you that deep in the Saudi Arabian desert lies a rock formation so perfectly split that it looks like it was cut by a laser beam? What if this geological marvel has stood balanced on delicate pedestals for thousands of years, challenging everything we think we know about ancient technology and natural forces? Imagine standing in the vast arid landscape of northwestern Saudi Arabia, about 50 kilometers south of the ancient Taima oasis. Before you rises a sandstone spectacle that defies logic. Two massive stone blocks, each balanced precariously on small natural pedestals, separated by a crack so precise it could pass for a laser-cut incision. This is Al-Nasla, a geological wonder that has captivated archaeologists, geologists, and conspiracy theorists alike. The formation stands approximately 6 meters, 20 feet tall, and 9 meters, 29 feet wide, with each half of the split rock maintaining an almost symmetrical balance that seems to defy gravity. The sheer weight of these sandstone blocks, estimated at hundreds of tons, makes their delicate positioning on narrow pedestals even more astonishing. But it's the perfectly straight fissure between them that truly sparks the imagination, a narrow gap that runs from top to bottom with millimeter precision, creating the unmistakable appearance of intentional cutting. Adding to the mystery, the surface of the rock features ancient petroglyphs, rock carvings depicting animals like horses, ibex, and human figures. These inscriptions, thousands of years old, testify that humans have been fascinated by this formation since antiquity, though their meaning remains as enigmatic as the rock itself. Mainstream geology offers several explanations for Al-Nasla's extraordinary appearance. One prominent theory suggests that the split resulted from tectonic activity. The region occasionally experiences shifts in Earth's crust, and a sudden movement might have fractured the sandstone along a straight line. Since sandstone is layered and relatively fragile, such a fracture could have occurred cleanly. However, this alone doesn't explain the smoothness of the fissure. Geologists propose that over thousands of years, wind carrying abrasive sand particles polished the fractured surfaces until they achieved their current glass-like smoothness. Another hypothesis points to natural joint formation. Joints are fractures in rock that occur without significant displacement, often resulting from tectonic compression or cooling processes. These joints frequently break rocks along straight lines. At Al-Nasla, there's even a parallel crack visible to the right of the main fissure, supporting this idea. Again, erosion would have smoothed these surfaces over time.
A third theory involves freeze-thaw weathering. Though the Saudi Arabian desert is now arid, it experienced cooler, wetter periods in the distant past. Water could have seeped into small cracks in the rock, freezing and expanding over countless cycles. This expansion would have gradually widened the cracks until the rock split. The melting water then deepened the fissure, eventually creating the precise split we see today. The delicate pedestals supporting each half also have a natural explanation. These are likely examples of mushroom rocks, common in desert landscapes. They form when wind blows faster near the ground, carrying sand that erodes the base of the rock more quickly than the top. This natural sand blasting effect could have carved the slender supports that make the rocks appear to float. Despite these geological explanations, many observers find it hard to accept that natural processes alone could create such perfection. This has led to more speculative, controversial theories. Some suggest that ancient civilizations possessed advanced technology far beyond what conventional history acknowledges. The precision of the cut parallels other ancient mysteries like the pyramids of Egypt or the megaliths of Baalbek, Lebanon, where massive stones were cut and moved with inexplicable accuracy. If these cultures could achieve such feats, why couldn't they have tools capable of slicing through stone with laser-like precision? More fantastically, extraterrestrial involvement has been proposed. Ancient astronaut theorists point to the cut's perfection and the rock's balanced positioning as evidence of alien technology. Could this have been a test site for advanced tools? Or perhaps a marker left by visitors from another world? As one internet commenter quipped, "I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens." Others propose that the split might have ritualistic or symbolic significance. Given the ancient petroglyphs on its surface, Al-Nasla might have been a sacred site. The split could represent a mythological division or a portal between worlds. However, without more archaeological evidence, these ideas remain in the realm of speculation. To understand Al-Nasla fully, we must consider its location. The Taima oasis has been inhabited since the Bronze Age and was a crucial stop on ancient trade routes. Archaeological excavations have uncovered artifacts dating back to the 4000 BCE, and the region is rich with historical significance. In 2010, a rock inscription bearing the name of Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses III was discovered near Taima, suggesting cross-cultural connections dating back millennia. The oasis was even mentioned in Assyrian inscriptions from the 8th century BCE, where it appeared as Tiamat. Later, in the 6th century BCE, Babylonian king Nabonidus retired to Taima for religious reasons, further highlighting its importance. The petroglyphs on Al-Nasla itself likely date back thousands of years, depicting animals like horses and ibexes that were significant to ancient peoples. These carvings add a layer of human history to the geological mystery, showing that Al-Nasla has been a point of fascination for millennia. So, we're left with more questions than answers. Was this incredible split the result of millennia of natural weathering? Or does it point to something more? A lost chapter in human history where technology rivaled our own? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. What makes Al-Nasla special is its ability to inspire wonder and curiosity. It stands as a testament to the mysteries still hidden in our world's remote corners, waiting for us to uncover their secrets.
What if I told you that scattered across a remote, mountainous plateau in Southeast Asia are thousands of massive stone jars, some weighing several tons, whose origin and purpose have been completely lost to history? What if this site is so enigmatic and so ancient that it potentially predates even the most famous megalithic wonders of our world? And what if the secret to unlocking this mystery has been guarded for millennia by one of the most dangerous landscapes on Earth? Imagine a vast, hauntingly beautiful landscape of rolling green hills and lush grasslands. Dotting this terrain as far as the eye can see are thousands of gigantic stone jars. They are hewn from solid rock, sandstone, granite, and limestone, and they vary dramatically in size. Some are mere 3-foot-tall vessels, while others are absolute behemoths, standing over 3 meters tall and weighing an estimated 10 to 12 tons each. That's heavier than a fully grown African elephant, and there are thousands of them. This isn't a single site, it's a sprawling network of over 90 documented jar sites across the Jiangquang Plateau in Laos. The largest and most famous site, Site 1 alone, contains 334 of these colossal jars. Many are cylindrical, but others are angular, square, or even disc-shaped. Some stand upright, while others are tilted, sunken into the earth, or lie broken on their sides, as if a race of giants simply walked away from their work one day and never returned. But here's the first layer of the mystery: the lids. A number of the jars have accompanying stone discs, carefully carved to fit their openings. These aren't rough covers. Some are intricately decorated with carvings of human figures, faces, or animals. This detail alone suggests a profound cultural significance, a purpose far beyond simple storage. Who were these people, and what were they trying to contain or protect with such monumental lids? So, what was the purpose of these incredible stone jars? Mainstream archaeology has its leading theory, but the truth is, no one knows for sure, and that's what makes this place so fascinating. The most widely accepted theory, championed by French archaeologist Madeleine Colani, who conducted the first major study in the 1930s, is that the jars were funerary urns. Colani excavated around the jars and found human remains, ash, burial goods like beads and tools, and ceramic pots. This evidence suggests the jars were used for either exposing the dead to the elements until only the bones remained, a practice known as excarnation, or for storing the cremated remains of the deceased. The smaller jars found nearby might have held offerings for the afterlife. This theory paints the Plain of Jars as one of the most extensive and ancient necropolises on the planet.
But other theories persist, fueled by the lack of a complete narrative. Local Lao legends tell a different story. One popular myth speaks of a race of giants who inhabited the area. Their king, Kun Chung, was a great warrior who, after a victorious battle, needed vast quantities of rice wine to celebrate. He ordered the creation of these massive jars to brew and store enough Lao Hai, rice wine, for his entire army. This charming folktale offers a more celebratory origin, though it doesn't explain the human remains found nearby. Other researchers have proposed the jars were used for collecting rainwater for caravan travelers along ancient trade routes, or for fermenting food and drink on an industrial scale. However, the funerary evidence remains the most compelling, yet still incomplete explanation. The questions of purpose quickly lead to even more profound mysteries. Who built them, and how did they do it? The jars are made from various types of rock, some of which, like sandstone and granite, are incredibly hard. The quarry sites have been identified, but this only deepens the mystery. How did a supposedly Iron Age society with rudimentary tools of bone, wood, and iron quarry, shape, and transport these multi-ton stone vessels over distances of several kilometers? We are talking about moving the weight of multiple elephants across mountainous terrain without the wheel, without pulleys, and without draft animals. The logistical feat is nothing short of astonishing. Even more puzzling is the complete lack of historical context. The culture that created the Plain of Jars has left no other significant monuments, no written records, and no clear descendants. They appear in history, perform this one staggering act of megalithic construction, and then vanish without a trace. Carbon dating of the archaeological materials found at the sites suggests they were in use from as early as 500 BCE to as late as 500 to 800 CE. That's a time span of over 1,000 years, yet we know virtually nothing about the people who spent centuries, perhaps millennia, carving these jars into the landscape. Perhaps the most chilling and tragic reason the Plain of Jars remains such a mystery is its modern history. During the secret war of the 1960s and 70s, the Xiangquang Plateau became the most heavily bombed place on Earth per capita. The United States dropped over 270 million cluster bombs on Laos in an attempt to cut off North Vietnamese supply lines. An estimated 80 million of these deadly submunitions failed to explode on impact. This means that to this day, vast areas around the jar sites remain contaminated with unexploded ordnance, or UXO. It is literally one of the most dangerous archaeological sites on the planet. Only a handful of the 90-plus sites had been cleared safe enough for tourists and archaeologists to visit. The rest are off-limits, guarded by fences and warning signs. The very earth that holds the clues to this ancient mystery is booby-trapped with relics of a modern war. This adds a somber, poignant layer to the enigma. The secrets of the past are literally protected by the deadly consequences of recent history. For those who look for patterns in ancient mysteries, the Plain of Jars invites comparison. While unique, the scale of the operation and the lost technology echo other megalithic sites, like the Moai of Easter Island or the stone spheres of Costa Rica. It represents another data point in a global pattern of ancient cultures achieving seemingly impossible feats of stoneworking. For purposes we can only guess at, was this an independent innovation, or is it evidence of a wider lost thread of human knowledge?
Next, our journey takes us to a desolate basalt-strewn plateau in the Golan Heights, just 16 kilometers east of the Sea of Galilee. What if I told you that hidden in the contested and rugged terrain of the Golan Heights lies a megalithic mystery so vast you can only see it from the sky? What if this structure, built from thousands of tons of stone, was so ancient that its original purpose was forgotten even by the builders of the pyramids? And what if a shocking new scientific discovery has just completely overturned the most popular theory about what it was used for? From the ground, this area looks like a rocky, uneven landscape, but if we rise above it, as archaeologists first did after the Six-Day War in 1967, an astonishing sight reveals itself. Carved into the very earth is a gigantic set of concentric circles, looking like a massive stone wheel or a target from a divine archer. This is Rouge el-Hiri, a name meaning stone heap of the wildcat in Arabic. In Hebrew, it's known as Gilgal Rephaim, or the Wheel of Ghosts, or the Wheel of Giants. The scale is almost incomprehensible. The outermost wall is 160 meters, or 520 feet in diameter. That's half the length of a modern aircraft carrier. The entire complex is constructed from a mind-boggling 42,000 basalt rocks, weighing a total of 40,000 tons. To put that Herculean effort into perspective, experts estimate it would have required more than 25,000 working days to complete. At its heart sits a central cairn or tumulus, a massive pile of stones 4.6 meters or 15 feet tall and 20 meters or 65 feet wide. The structure is comprised of 4 to 9 concentric circles. The number varies due to collapse and debate, with the walls connected by irregular perpendicular radial walls, creating a labyrinthine effect. There are only 2 entrances, both on the eastern side, with the largest facing northeast. But here's the first crucial question. Why was it built here, and why is it so hard to see from the ground? Was it meant to be appreciated by someone or something looking down from above? For decades, the leading and most captivating theory was that Rouge el-Hiri was a sophisticated astronomical observatory and calendar, often dubbed the Stonehenge of the East. This theory, proposed by researchers like Anthony Avey and Yonatan Mizrachi, suggested the structure's alignments were meticulously planned. It was believed that on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the first rays of the sun would shine perfectly through the northeastern entrance, illuminating the central chamber. Other notches in the walls were thought to align with the equinoxes and certain constellations, potentially helping an ancient agricultural society know precisely when to plant and harvest crops. This theory was so elegant and compelling that it became the mainstream explanation. But now, prepare for a shocking twist. A groundbreaking study published in November 2024 in the journal Remote Sensing has completely dismantled this idea. An international team of researchers from Israel and Azerbaijan used advanced satellite imagery, geomagnetic analysis, and tectonic reconstruction to study the site in unprecedented detail. Their conclusion is a bombshell. The entire structure has moved.
Centuries of tectonic activity in the seismically active Golan Heights have caused the ground to shift, rotating the massive stones counterclockwise and shifting them from their original position by tens of meters. The study's authors state, the geological structure of the el-Hiri's area has been shaped by the tectonic evolution of the region, leading to the rotation of blocks, and therefore the migration of its location and the direction of the main entrance and the radial walls over time. This means any alignment with celestial bodies we see today is purely accidental. The beautiful solstice sunrise we thought shone through the gate? A coincidence. The alignments with constellations? An illusion created by shifting ground. This revelation has forced archaeologists back to square one, reopening the mystery of the site's true purpose.
So, what was it? With the astronomy theory debunked, we're left with several other compelling, and in some cases, chilling possibilities. 1. A vast necropolis for giants and kings. The most prominent alternative theory centers on the central cairn, which excavations in the 1980s and 90s revealed to be a dolmen, a single-chamber tomb. A narrow 6-meter-long corridor leads to a burial chamber built from massive stone slabs, some weighing over 5.5 tons, forming a corbelled dome. However, the tomb was looted in antiquity, leaving only a few artifacts like gold earrings and bronze arrowheads. This has led to speculation that the entire monumental complex was a mausoleum for a mighty early Bronze Age chieftain. This connects directly to the site's Hebrew name, Wheel of Giants, and the biblical legend of King Og of Bashan. Deuteronomy 3:11 describes Og as the last of the Rephaim, a race of giants whose immense iron bed was kept in a nearby city. The local folklore suggests that only giants could have moved such enormous stones, forever linking the site to Og's myth. 2. A site for excarnation. Another macabre theory, proposed by archaeologist Rami Arav, suggests the site was used for excarnation, the practice of exposing dead bodies to the elements to remove the flesh from the bones. The concentric walls could have created a secluded labyrinthine space where bodies were laid out for vultures and other scavengers. This Zoroastrian-like practice would explain the lack of human remains and the site's Wheel of Ghosts moniker, as it would be associated with spirits and the dead. 3. A ritual center for a nomadic people. Some archaeologists believe the circles were built during the early Bronze Age, 3000 to 2700 BCE, as a cultic and ceremonial center. Nomadic tribes in the process of settling might have gathered here annually for rituals, perhaps to placate the gods or celebrate a seasonal festival. The central tomb could have been a later addition, built over 1,000 years after the circles. The remote sensing study from 2024 also revealed additional, previously unknown flower-like clusters of small walls around the main site, suggesting it was repurposed and added to over many centuries by different cultures, further obscuring its original function. The mystery of Rujum el-Hiri stands as a powerful reminder of how much we still have to learn about our ancient past. It is a site of immense scale and profound mystery, whose most popular explanation has just been swept away by modern science. Was it a monumental tomb for a giant king? A grim site for sky burials? A sacred gathering place for forgotten rituals? Or something else entirely that we haven't even considered? The stones remain silent, their original configuration altered by the slow, inexorable movement of the earth itself. The truth is buried not just under rock and soil, but under millennia of tectonic shifts and human legend.
Scattered across a high-altitude Bolivian plateau are the ruins of a structure so precise, so complex, that it looks like a giant divine IKEA kit shattered by some apocalyptic force.
What if the stones of this site were cut with a level of geometric perfection that would be challenging to achieve even with modern power tools? And what if a shocking new scientific theory suggests these weren't even carved at all, but poured like concrete, rewriting everything we thought we knew about ancient construction? Our journey takes us to the wind-swept high-altitude plains of the Bolivian Andes, nearly 13,000 feet, 3,850 meters above sea level. The air is thin, the sky is vast, and lying before us are the ruins of a civilization that has baffled experts for centuries. This is Pumapunku, an Aymara name meaning the Gateway of the Puma. It is part of the larger Tiwanaku complex, a pre-Columbian archaeological site that was once the heart of a powerful empire. But to call Pumapunku a mere temple complex is a dramatic understatement. From the air, the site appears as a T-shaped terraced earthen platform mound, but on the ground, it looks like a playground for giants hit by a cataclysm. Everywhere you look, massive stone blocks are scattered like a child's toy bricks after a tantrum. These are not simple rough-hewn rocks. We're looking at a jigsaw puzzle of andesite and red sandstone with pieces weighing up to 130 tons, the weight of a fully loaded Boeing 757 jet, that were somehow quarried from mountains miles away and transported to this remote plateau. Let's break down the details, because the devil and the absolute wonder is in these details. First, the scale. The largest stone slab at the site, part of the Plataforma Litica, measures a staggering 7.8 meters long, 5.2 meters wide, and 1.1 meters thick, weighing an estimated 131 tons. Imagine the logistics of moving this behemoth and dozens of others like it across 10 kilometers of rugged terrain from the shores of Lake Titicaca, all without the wheel, without draft animals, and at an altitude that leaves modern visitors gasping for air. But the size is only half the story. The other half is the precision. The stones of Pumapunku are famous for their H-blocks, geometric blocks that resemble giant stone Lego pieces. These blocks are not just roughly shaped, they are identical in form, with perfectly flush surfaces, crisp 90-degree interior angles, and complex cuts that interlock with each other in a sophisticated modular system.
The joints between these blocks are so precise that you cannot slide a razor blade or even a piece of paper between them. This isn't just skilled craftsmanship, it's a level of precision engineering that suggests a profound understanding of descriptive geometry and stone cutting that seems to defy the era of its creation. Then there are the mysterious drill holes. Several stones feature perfectly cylindrical bores that look like they were made with a high-speed, diamond-tipped drill bit. Mainstream archaeology tells us the Tiwanaku people had only stone and copper tools, so how did they achieve such mechanical perfection? Even the method of assembly is a mystery. The builders used a unique metal clamp system to hold stones together. But recent analysis of these clamps revealed a bizarre alloy composition: 95.15% copper, 2.05% arsenic, 1.70% nickel, 0.84% silicon, and 0.26% iron. The presence of nickel is particularly baffling, as there are no known sources of nickel in Bolivia. Furthermore, scans suggest the metal was poured into carved indentations as a liquid, meaning the builders had portable smelters working at this incredible altitude. This is where the mystery deepens into controversy. When was Pumapunku built? Mainstream archaeology, based on radiocarbon dating of organic material from the mound fill, places the initial construction of Pumapunku between 536 and 600 AD. This aligns with the peak of the Tiwanaku Empire, a sophisticated culture that dominated the region from around 500 to 1000 AD. However, this timeline is fiercely contested. The early 20th century researcher Arthur Poznański studied the site for decades and proposed a radically different age. Using a controversial method of archaeoastroastronomy, he argued that the alignments of the structures indicated they were built around 12,000 or 17,000 years ago. Mainstream archaeology has widely rejected Poznański's methods and conclusions, noting his flawed data and connections to now debunked theories of scientific racism. But his theory persists in alternative history circles, fueled by the undeniable fact that the engineering feels impossibly advanced for its time.
Now, prepare for a theory that could rewrite the playbook entirely. What if the stones of Pumapunku weren't quarried and carved, but cast? This is the revolutionary proposal of materials scientist Professor Joseph David Ovitz. His team conducted the first ever electron microscope analysis of stones from Pumapunku and made a stunning discovery. The red sandstone blocks, they argue, contain elements like sodium carbonate not found in the local geology, suggesting an artificial origin. Even more shockingly, the hard andesite H blocks were found to contain organic matter based on carbon. This is a bombshell. Andesite is a volcanic rock formed at extremely high temperatures, which would vaporize any organic material. Its presence suggests the andesite was not carved, but was instead a manufactured geopolymer, a type of ancient concrete. David Ovitz proposes that the builders crushed softer local stone, mixed it with natural binders like clay and plant extracts, which release carboxylic acids, and poured the mixture into molds where it hardened over time. This would explain the impossible precision, the lack of tool marks, and the legendary local stories of a plant that could soften stone. If true, this means the builders of Pumapunku weren't master stonemasons. They were primitive chemical engineers, using their profound knowledge of local geology and chemistry to create artificial stone. This theory dismantles the alien or lost super-civilization narratives by showing how human ingenuity could achieve these wonders. Whether built with geopolymer or granite tools, Pumapunku was clearly the crown jewel of a powerful and sophisticated state. At its peak, the Tiwanaku city was a thriving metropolis of 10,000 to 20,000 people, a major spiritual and political center whose influence stretched across the Andes. The site was likely an unimaginably wondrous ceremonial center, adorned with polished metal plaques, brightly colored ceramics, and fabric ornamentation. It was a place where elaborately dressed priests, elites decked in exotic jewelry, and costumed citizens would gather for rituals and ceremonies. The Tiwanaku economy was based on a complex agro-pastoral system and trade, supported by raised field agriculture that allowed them to thrive at high altitude. Their society was highly stratified, with elites likely redistributing resources to commoners, who specialized in farming, herding, or crafts like pottery and textiles. Like all great civilizations, Tiwanaku's glory eventually faded. The site is believed to have collapsed around 1000 AD. The reasons are still debated, but recent geological studies suggest a major drought in the region could have devastated their agricultural systems and led to a sudden, dramatic decline. What remains is a field of shattered dreams and broken stone. The Spanish conquistadors who first saw it in the 16th century described it as inconceivable, and that word still holds true today. Centuries of looting, stone mining for construction, and natural weathering have left the site in ruins, a chaotic jumble that makes its original form difficult to decipher. So, where does this leave us? The mystery of Pumapunku is a multi-layered puzzle. Was it built 1,500 years ago by the ingenious Tiwanaku culture using advanced yet entirely human engineering and geopolymer chemistry? Or does its mind-bending precision point to a far older, lost chapter in human history? The stones themselves refuse to give up their secrets easily. They stand as a silent, broken testament to a level of achievement that seems to oscillate between the impossibly advanced and the ingeniously simple. Perhaps the true lesson of Pumapunku is that we have consistently underestimated the brilliance of ancient civilizations.
They didn't need aliens. They had the power of observation, generations of trial and error, and a deep, intimate connection with the materials their world provided them with.
Coiled within the rolling hills of Ohio lies a quarter-mile-long earthwork so ancient that its true builders remain one of archaeology's greatest enigmas? What if this massive serpent, sculpted from the very earth, wasn't just a religious symbol, but a sophisticated astronomical calendar precisely aligned with the cosmos? And what if a shocking new theory suggests it was built on the site of a cataclysmic meteor strike, harnessing the very energy of the Earth itself? Our journey takes us to a remote plateau in Peebles, Ohio, overlooking the serene Brush Creek. Here, across a high bluff, an unimaginable figure is etched into the landscape. A 1,348-foot-long or 411-meter-long serpent, the largest effigy mound in the entire world. From the ground, its scale is almost impossible to comprehend, but from the air, its form is breathtakingly clear. The serpent's body winds in 7 graceful undulating coils before culminating in a magnificent triple-coiled tail. At its head, the creature's gaping jaws seem to engulf a massive 120-foot-long oval mound, often interpreted as an egg, a frog, or perhaps the sun. Constructed from a mix of yellowish clay, ash, and soil reinforced by rocks, the mound ranges from just 1 to 3 feet in height and between 20 to 25 feet in width. But its power isn't in its height, it's in its profound, sinuous presence. This isn't just a pile of dirt, it's a geoglyph, a drawing on a monumental scale meant to be seen and understood from a perspective higher than any human could achieve without modern technology. The question is, who was it meant to impress? The central heated mystery of Serpent Mound isn't just its purpose, but its very age. Who built it? This question has sparked a century-long archaeological war, and the answer completely changes our understanding of North American history.
For decades, the leading theory attributed the mound to the Adena culture, a prehistoric Native American people who inhabited the Ohio Valley from roughly 800 BCE to 100 CE. This theory was based largely on the presence of 2 nearby Adena burial mounds. The Adena were master mound builders, known for their conical burial structures. But then, a bombshell. In the 1990s, a new team collected charcoal samples from the mound and used radiocarbon dating. The results were staggering. The dates pointed to around 1070 CE, suggesting the builder was not the Adena, but the Fort Ancient culture, a later society that thrived from 1000 to 1650 CE. This made sense to some, as the Fort Ancient people frequently depicted serpents in their art and built other effigy mounds like the Alligator Mound in Ohio. Just when a consensus was forming, the plot twisted again. In 2014, another study published in the Journal of Archaeological Science presented new radiocarbon evidence pushing the date back to the Adena period, around 300 BCE. The authors of this study proposed a compelling compromise. The Adena built it, and the Fort Ancient culture later refurbished or repaired it around 1100 CE. The debate is fierce and ongoing. Mainstream archaeology remains divided. Critics of the older date point out that the 2014 samples were organic sediment from soil cores, which can be notoriously unreliable and yield dates thousands of years older than the actual structure. Furthermore, the Adena are not known for building effigy mounds or using serpent symbolism, while the Fort Ancient culture is. This isn't just academic squabbling. The difference between 300 BCE and 1070 CE is over 1,300 years. It's the difference between a structure built by an early mound building culture and one built by a later, more complex society potentially influenced by the massive Mississippian civilization to the south.
The true answer would rewrite chapters of Native American history. Beyond the question of its builders lies an even more profound mystery. What was its purpose? The evidence points to something far more complex than a simple religious symbol. Serpent Mound appears to be a gigantic, sophisticated astronomical observatory. The entire effigy is precisely aligned to celestial events. The serpent's head is aligned to the summer solstice sunset, while its tail points to the winter solstice sunrise. This means on the longest day of the year, the setting sun appears to set directly behind the head, and on the shortest day, the sun rises in alignment with the tail. But the precision goes even deeper. The 7 coils of the serpent's body have been proposed to align with the equinoxes and other lunar events. Some researchers have suggested the oval object at the mouth could represent the sun, and the serpent swallowing it could depict a solar eclipse. Another theory posits that the serpent's form mirrors the constellation Draco in the northern sky, with the pole star matching the first curve in its body, potentially making the mound a true north compass. This astronomical sophistication is not unique, but its scale is.
It places Serpent Mound in a global tradition of ancient sites like Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza, all designed to track the cycles of the heavens. For its builders, it was likely the ultimate calendar, marking the times for planting, harvest, and sacred ceremonies, weaving their spiritual beliefs directly into the fabric of the cosmos. Now, prepare for the most mind-bending layer of this mystery. Serpent Mound wasn't built on a random hill. It was constructed directly on the edge of the Serpent Mound disturbance, a 5-mile diameter area of highly disturbed and folded bedrock. Geologists from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources believe this area is a deeply eroded crater caused by a meteorite impact a staggering 250 to 300 million years ago. It is the single most complex geologic structure exposed at the surface in Ohio. The ancient builders would have undoubtedly noticed the unique features of this land, the unusual folds in the rock, the strange energy of the place. While they wouldn't have understood its extraterrestrial origin, they likely recognized it as a place of immense power. Building their cosmic serpent directly on the scar of a star itself suggests they were seeking to tap into this primordial energy, connecting their celestial symbol with a literal wound from the cosmos. Unlike most mounds in its time, Serpent Mound contains no artifacts and no human remains. This immediately sets it apart. It was not a burial site. It was something else entirely. The prevailing theory is that it was a sacred ceremonial site, a place for communities to gather for rituals tied to the changing seasons, astronomy, and their spiritual beliefs. The site's preservation is a modern miracle. It was saved from destruction in the late 19th century by Frederick Ward Putnam of Harvard University and later purchased by 3 local women to prevent its destruction. Today, it is a National Historic Landmark and is on the United States tentative list for submission to UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, a status that would place it alongside global wonders like the Taj Mahal and the Great Wall of China. Serpent Mound remains America's greatest prehistoric enigma. It is a testament to the incredible astronomical knowledge, engineering skill, and spiritual depth of ancient Native American cultures. Was it an Adena masterpiece, later adopted by the Fort Ancient people? Or was it solely the work of the Fort Ancient culture, a testament to their complex world? Was it a celestial calendar, a sacred temple, or a monument built on a star scar to harness the Earth's energy? The serpent keeps its secrets, coiled in silence for over 1,000 years. It stands as a powerful reminder that long before European contact, the North American continent was home to sophisticated societies capable of breathtaking achievements that we are only just beginning to understand.
What if the countless flood myths found in cultures across our planet aren't myths at all, but a fragmented, traumatic memory of a real global cataclysm? What if the mysterious megalithic structures we've explored, from the impossible walls of Sacsayhuamán to the cosmic alignments of Serpent Mound, are not just ancient mysteries, but the surviving rubble of a pre-flood world? A world built by an advanced civilization whose name and history were almost completely erased from existence. Let's start with a fact so staggering it demands a complete re-evaluation of history. The story of a great civilization-ending flood is not unique to the Bible. It is the single most widespread narrative in human mythology. In Mesopotamia, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, who built a great boat to survive a divine deluge sent by the god Enlil. In ancient Greece, Plato wrote of the sunken continent of Atlantis, destroyed by earthquakes and floods in a single day and night of misfortune. In Hindu scriptures, the god Vishnu takes the form of a fish to warn the sage Manu of a coming flood, instructing him to build a massive ark. The Maya have their Popol Vuh, which tells of a great flood unleashed by the gods to destroy the first failed race of humans. Even among the indigenous tribes of the Americas, from the Hopi to the Choctaw, stories persist of a time when the waters rose and only a few survivors remained. Over 500 distinct flood legends have been documented across every corner of the globe. This isn't a coincidence. This is a collective memory. The details change, the names of the gods, the size of the boat, the hero, but the core event remains terrifyingly consistent. An immense, catastrophic inundation of water that wiped the slate of humanity almost clean.
For centuries, these stories were dismissed as allegory. But in the last few decades, a growing body of geological evidence has emerged that suggests these myths are rooted in a terrifying reality. The leading scientific theory points to the end of the last glacial period, around 12,800 to 11,600 years ago. As the world warmed, the massive ice sheets that covered North America and Europe began to melt catastrophically. This wasn't a gentle process. Meltwater Pulse 1b, around 11,500 years ago, saw global sea levels rise by an estimated 14 meters or 46 feet in under 400 years. Imagine the coastline you live on retreating by miles, not over millennia, but within a few generations. Entire continental shelves were submerged. The Black Sea was once a freshwater lake. Then, around 7,600 years ago, a natural dam at the Bosporus burst and saltwater from the Mediterranean catastrophically flooded it, inundating an area the size of Ireland and turning it into a sea overnight. An event that may be the direct origin of the Noah and Gilgamesh flood myths. But there's an even more catastrophic theory. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis proposes that around 12,800 years ago, a fragmented comet or asteroid struck the Earth's ice sheets. The impact would have instantly vaporized trillions of tons of ice, triggering a global flood, plunging the planet back into a mini ice age for over 1,000 years and causing the immediate extinction of megafauna like woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers. Evidence for this includes a mysterious black matte layer of sediment found at archaeological sites across North America, filled with nanodiamonds, magnetic microspherules, and other materials that only form under extreme temperatures and pressures. Whether by meltwater or impact, the geologic record is clear. The world experienced a series of devastating, rapid-onset floods at the end of the last ice age. This is the potential scientific bedrock of the global flood myth. The theory, often called the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis or the lost civilization hypothesis, posits that a sophisticated seafaring culture existed during the last ice age. This culture, potentially based on now subcontinental shelves like Sundaland or Doggerland, possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and megalithic construction. When the cataclysm struck, whether comet impact or rapid meltwater pulses, their coastal cities were obliterated, sunk beneath the waves. The survivors, scattered across the globe in small groups, would have become the gods and culture heroes of emerging post-flood societies. They would have imparted their knowledge, which is why we see a sudden, unexplained explosion of agriculture, megalithic construction, and astronomy at sites like Göbekli Tepe and the Giza Plateau shortly after the proposed flood date. They built with massive, durable stone, not for glory, but for survival, to create structures that could withstand the earthquakes and floods they knew were coming. Their legacy is not in written records, which would have been destroyed, but in the impossible stones they left behind and the universal, terrified story of the day the water won. The mainstream archaeological view remains skeptical, demanding more evidence, and they are right to be cautious. But the pieces of the puzzle are there: the universal myth, the geological evidence for catastrophe, and the existence of mysteriously ancient advanced structures that defy conventional timelines. The Great Flood may be more than a story. It may be the key to understanding the single most important event in human history, an event that reset our civilization and forced us to start over, forever haunted by the memory of what was lost. The truth of our past may not be buried in the sands of Egypt, but hidden beneath the waves of our oceans, waiting for us to dive deeper and uncover the secrets of a world before our own.